Good evening and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a very special meeting of the Downers Grove Village Council on this day, May 2nd, 2017. There are copies of our agenda on either side of the room. If you haven't already done so and would like to pick up a copy and follow along with our proceedings tonight, I would encourage you to please do so. There will be multiple opportunities for public comment, both with respect to items that are on tonight's agenda, as well as a special segment when we get to it under item 10 tonight, which is reserved for questions and comments from members of the audience with respect to items of a general nature. These are items that are not on tonight's agenda. There will be opportunities for public comment with respect to things that are on tonight's agenda when we get to those items. I said that tonight is a very special meeting because every couple of years we have something called an election in local government, and we have new members that come and go over the course of time, and tonight we are very pleased to have 4 of our members returning to us tonight, so there's a little bit of continuity here, but also a great deal of celebration in making it official that they'll be joining us. But we're going to take care of a little business first, and then we will get to the procedure that leads into the swearing in of 4 of our village commissioners, which will keep you hanging in suspense for 15 minutes or so. It is our proud custom to begin our meetings by reciting the Pledge of Allegiance, so I'd like to ask everyone present to please rise and join us in reciting the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much for joining us. Now I'd like to ask our fine village clerk, April Holden, to please call the roll.
Commissioner Wallace? Here. Commissioner Earl? Here. Commissioner Waldeck?
Here.
Commissioner White?
Here.
Commissioner Jose?
Here.
Commissioner Barnett?
Here.
Mayor Tully?
Here. Thank you very much. It brings us to item 3, which pertains to minutes of past council meetings. We have one set of minutes to review and approve tonight, and those are our minutes from our regular council meeting of April 18th, 2017. If there are no changes, questions, or corrections to those minutes, I'll entertain a motion to approve, please.
Mayor Tully, I move that this council approve the minutes as presented.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Those minutes are approved. Thank you. That brings us to item 4, our consent agenda. We have a number of items on tonight's consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
Mayor Tully, I move that this council approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Are there any questions or comments from any members of the audience with respect to any of the items on tonight's consent agenda? Questions or comments from any members of the village council? Hearing none, can I have a roll call, please?
Commissioner White?
Aye.
Commissioner Waldeck?
Aye.
Commissioner Wallace?
Aye.
Commissioner Earl? Aye. Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye. Consent agenda is approved unanimously. And I don't know about you, but I'm tuckered out. That's a lot of work. So I think we should move to adjourn sine die. So can I have a motion to adjourn sine die, please?
Mayor Tully, I move that this council adjourn sine die.
Second.
And before I call a roll, will be officially the last vote of the 2015-2017 Village Council. Roll call, please.
Commissioner White?
Aye.
Commissioner Waldeck?
Aye.
Commissioner Wallace?
Aye.
Commissioner Earl? Aye. Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye. This council is adjourned. Normally, there is a ceremony that takes place now where we tearfully bid farewell to our departing members before welcoming our new members. But you're going to notice no reshuffling of the dais here today. What I would now like to do is, and it's been my privilege to do this over a few different occasions, is we are now going to have a swearing-in ceremony for our returning commissioners, Commissioner Nicole Wallace, Commissioner Marge Earl, Commissioner Greg Jose, and Commissioner Bob Barnett. As mentioned, they all previously have served in different tenures on this village council, and we're very glad to have them back. But as they say, we need to make it official. And so to help us doing that here tonight, we are very honored and privileged to have with us once again our very own Downers Grove resident and DuPage County Circuit Court Associate Judge, Anne Celine O'Halloran Walsh is here tonight to help us with this swearing in. So I'm going to ask Judge Walsh to please come up, and we are going to start in the order that I read them with Commissioner Nicole Wallace, please. And of course, by all means, members of Commissioner Wallace's family, please come on up.
I state your name.
I, Nicole Wallace,
Having been elected to the office of Commissioner in the Village of Downers Grove
having been elected to the office of Village Commissioner
in the Village of Downers
in the
Grove
Village of Downers Grove
in the County of DuPage,
in the County of DuPage,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
and the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
and I will faithfully discharge the duties of Commissioner according to the best of my ability.
and I will faithfully discharge the duties of Commissioner to the best of my ability.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you. And now I'd like to ask Commissioner Marge Earl to please step up.
We're not going to be nearly as cute.
Maybe you can stand on that side first. Raise your right hand. I state your name.
I, Margaret Earl,
Having been elected to the office of Commissioner
having been elected to the office of Commissioner
in the Village of Downers Grove
in the Village of Downers Grove
in the County of
in the
DuPage,
County of DuPage,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of
and the
Illinois,
Constitution of the State of Illinois,
and I will faithfully discharge the duties
and I will faithfully discharge the duties
of the office of Commissioner
of the office of Commissioner
according to the best of my abilities.
according to the best of my abilities.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And now I'd like to ask Commissioner Greg Jose to please step up.
Raise your right hand. I state your name.
I, Gregory Jose,
Having been elected to the office of Commissioner
having been elected to the office of Commissioner
in the Village of Downers Grove
in the Village of Downers Grove
in the County of DuPage,
in the County of DuPage,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
and the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
and that I will faithfully discharge
and that I will faithfully discharge
the duties of the office of Commissioner
the duties of the office of Commissioner
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And last but certainly not least, Commissioner Bob Barnett.
Raise your right hand. I state your name.
I, Robert Barnett,
Having been elected to the office of Commissioner
having been elected to the office of Commissioner
in the Village of Downers Grove
in the Village of Downers Grove
in the County of
in the
DuPage,
County of DuPage,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of
and
Illinois,
the Constitution of the State of
and
Illinois,
I will faithfully discharge
and I will faithfully
the
discharge
duties of office of Commissioner
the duties of office of Commissioner
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
Congratulations, Bob.
We're going to take a 15-minute break in a little bit so that we can properly celebrate and recognize the auspicious occasion of the return of our four colleagues and their swearing in tonight. But beforehand, we have to sufficiently embarrass them by making comments about them. I'll start, and then I'm going to allow each of my colleagues to say a few words before we break and then return back to some business. Congratulations to each of you, and welcome back. We're glad to have you, and we can get back to the business of this council. Good to have both Commissioner Jose and Commissioner Barnett back. I've had the privilege of working with both of them for a number of years, and I know that you will continue to dedicate yourselves to moving the village forward in a number of different fronts. And always appreciate your insights and the acumen that you bring to the table. One thing I've often said is, while we may not always agree on things, if all 7 people up here agreed on everything, there would be no reason for 7 people on the council. We should most appropriately be reflective of the diversity within the community, but be able to have a respectful dialogue on even issues that we disagree on. So both of you, congratulations and welcome back. To Commissioners Earl and Commissioner Wallace, it's a little bit different when you're sworn in after being elected than when you're appointed. It's very special, so congratulations on both winning your elections. I know it was a tough battle all the way down to the wire, but I think the fact that all of you actually were uncontested, I take as a vote of confidence in the leadership of this community. So you should be congratulated and should be proud of yourselves for that. So very glad to continue to be working with you for the next couple of years as we have now, well, we haven't exactly done the roll call for the 2017-2019 council. We'll do that later. But I will stop there and just simply say welcome back and congratulations, and open the dais up to either Commissioner Waldeck or Commissioner White if there's anything they would like to say.
Okay, I'll start. Congratulations to the 4 of you. It's nice to have been working with some of you for a few years and some a few months, but we've gotten to know one another pretty well. I think we're working well together. There's been some tough issues that we've had to address and will continue to address, and I like the continuity that we've established the last few months, and I'm glad to see you returning and not having to indoctrinate any rookies. We're all seasoned veterans now, and probably in a quick, especially Commissioner Wallace, who had to pick up things in a very quick manner, has done well, and I'm very proud of the group, very proud of the election results. I wish you all well for your terms. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner White.
I'd like to start by basically endorsing everything that Mayor Tully and Commissioner Waldeck said. Congratulations, everybody. I'm not going to repeat all that. I'll say that it's good to work with Commissioners Jose and Barnett, and I want to say, in my opinion, I'm very impressed by how quickly Commissioners Earl and Commissioner Wallace have caught on and have been a very fast study and catching up, and it's important because we do have some southern issues to deal with. And I also want to point out, I think everyone knows this, normally on this evening, we would adjourn and we'd have a party, we'd be very happy. But we're going to take our 15-minute break, and then they're going to get right back to work on some very difficult issues later this evening. So if the chair is ready, I can move for a break.
Well, I thought I'd allow
the audience.
newly
I'm sorry.
sworn-in members, if they wanted to say something, no obligation.
Mary, can I add one thing?
Absolutely. It's a,
As I was making comments, I know I have a tendency to face this way, and Commissioner Jose was right behind my back to it.
no offense intended.
No offense taken at all.
Thank you.
No worries. We'll start with Commissioner Jose. If there's anything you'd like to say, no obligation. You have 2 years to say a lot of things.
And you know that I don't hesitate. Thank you, Mayor. I'd prepared some remarks, but it all seems a little silly because we've got a lot of work to do. And I think it's fitting that this is not just a ceremonial meeting, that we've got quite the agenda facing us tonight. I just want to thank everybody in the village for placing their trust in me and all of us in the form of an uncontested election and for putting us back into office. I think we've made a lot of progress over the last 4 years, and we're going to continue to. And I look forward to making Downers Grove an even better place for our children and grandchildren. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner. Welcome back. Commissioner Burnett.
Thanks, Mayor. I didn't really prepare any comments, but I guess I'd like to echo Greg's sentiments and thank the residents for putting their trust in us. An uncontested election may say a lot of things, but I think probably first and foremost, as the mayor said, it talks about the trust that our residents have in us. This is truly a privilege and an honor to serve in this capacity, and as I start in here again, I'm looking forward to it, and I really do appreciate that confidence, and I appreciate the residents' faith and continued input into their own community. So we will get to work tonight, and we do have lots to do, and I think most of us enjoy doing it, so thank you all.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Earl.
I want to thank my family, as this has taken a lot of time from the family. They've been very supportive, and I can't thank them enough. I want to thank the community in electing me for my first term, but also this is an endorsement of the current council in that you agreed with who the majority of the council appointed, and that was Commissioner Wallace and I. And I think we very much appreciate the fact that the election was uncontested, and we have tried very hard in the last 6 months to get up to speed, and we are pleased that you think we're doing well, and we're going to continue to try very hard to work for you. So thank you all very much.
Thank you, Commissioner. And finally, Commissioner Wallace.
I will keep it brief and say thank you to the community and also my family. This has been a very interesting transition, having 2 little ones at home and working and doing this, but I've truly enjoyed this experience. I've learned so much. I feel like we have a very good camaraderie up here between the 7 of us, and I look forward to working with everyone for the next couple years. And thank you, and please continue to remain engaged and make sure that you're engaging us with your questions and concerns moving forward. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. And again, yes, I think that would be very appropriate. A round of applause. Since we're actually not in a formal meeting, we can applaud all we want, right? I just want to thank everyone in the audience for your patience tonight. As been mentioned, normally we would do the swearing-in ceremony, and that's all we would do tonight, but we realize that we have a lot of work to do, so we appreciate your patience while we have a brief 15-minute celebration, which I think our newly elected and returning members certainly deserve. So we appreciate your patience. Don't go anywhere. We will be getting back to work in about 15 minutes. But finally, I also want to add my thanks to the families of each of my returning colleagues, because we really appreciate you and the sacrifices that you make, lending them to us and to the community so that we can do this work. So my thanks to each and every one of you. And with that, we will...
Do we need a motion?
I don't think we need a motion. We're actually adjourned. We can just take a 15-minute recess and be back in, let's try to make it 7:35, please. Because I know a lot of people are here tonight on issues, and we'd like to get to your business as quickly as possible. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you again for your patience. We appreciate it. And we are now back in the saddle, so to speak, and ready to do the people's work. I would like to recall this meeting, the first meeting of the 2017-2019 Downers Grove Village Council to order. And I could not possibly do so without asking our fine village clerk to please call the roll.
Commissioner Wallace? Here. Commissioner Earl?
Here.
Commissioner Waldeck?
Here.
Commissioner White?
Here.
Commissioner Jose?
Here.
Commissioner Barnett?
Here.
Mayor Tully?
Here, thank you very much. We're operating under the same agenda that we were before, and you'll notice that everyone is sitting in the same places as they were before. We will not have to pledge allegiance to the flag again. We will move to item 9 on tonight's agenda, which pertains to a proclamation that I have to read tonight on a very important topic. Whereas historic preservation is an effective tool for revitalizing and sustaining neighborhoods, fostering local pride and maintaining a sense of place while enhancing livability, and whereas historic preservation is relevant for communities across the nation, both urban and rural, and for Americans of all ages, all walks of life, and all ethnic backgrounds. And whereas it is important to celebrate the role of history in our lives and the contributions made by dedicated individuals in helping to preserve the tangible aspects of the heritage that has shaped us as a community. And whereas This Place Matters is the theme for Historic Preservation Month 2017, and whereas This Place Matters is a national campaign that encourages people to celebrate the places that are meaningful to them and to their communities. And whereas Historic Preservation Month 2017 is an occasion for celebrating the historic resources within the community and increasing public awareness of the importance of historic preservation so that special resources can be preserved to pass on to future generations. Now, therefore, I, Martin T. Tully, Mayor of the Village of Downers Grove, do hereby proclaim May 2017 as Historic Preservation Month in the Village of Downers Grove. And to receive this proclamation, most appropriately, would be our Director of Community Planning, Stan Popovich, who has been instrumental in increasing our awareness and acumen when it comes to historic preservation, making our ordinance a better one than it was before in terms of landmarking, and working with many residents whose increased interest in historic preservation and in voluntary landmarking has led to an unprecedented number of homes and buildings in our community being landmarked. It is with pride and appreciation and gratitude that I present this to Stan Popovich. Thank you. Thank you. And now you got the standard of the photo. That's the wonderful. Thank you for everything. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you. Now we move on to item 10. Item 10 is reserved for public comments of a general nature with respect to items that are not on tonight's agenda. So I know there are folks that are here tonight to speak on items that are on our agenda. We will get to those momentarily. But for now, if there are any members of the audience who would like to speak to a question or have a comment with respect to a general matter not on tonight's agenda. Good evening, sir. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor. David Olson, 5613 Dunham Road in Downers Grove. I'm also honored to serve as state representative for the 81st District, which encompasses much of Downers Grove. I'm here tonight I've been going around to various boards at this time of transition for our local boards, and many of them I'm handing out certificates congratulating and thanking the outgoing members for their service. Well, I don't have to do that tonight, but I did want to be here to congratulate each of the members who have been reelected to this post. It's an extremely important one. I very much enjoyed the time that I spent here in serving as commissioner in Village of Downers Grove, and I want to wish each of the village commissioners, Commissioner Wallace, Commissioner Earl, Commissioner Jose, Commissioner Barnett, all the best as they continue upon this challenge of governing in our town. I mean, this is a very engaged community, and I know we all appreciate the engagement of the members of the public throughout this community, and I encourage everyone in the audience to continue to reach out to your village council, because this is an outstanding group of people, and while you may not always agree with them, they are very, very accessible and responsive to the residents. So I encourage people to continue their civic participation, and I want to thank and congratulate all of the newly re-elected members. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Representative Olson. Always good to see you. Other questions or comments of a general nature with respect to items not on tonight's agenda? Good evening. Welcome.
Thank you. Liz Cholberg, 1132 Curtis. I'm here on behalf of the Downers Grove Historical Society. The Downers Grove Historical Society and the Downers Grove Museum would like to invite the community to the annual Founders Day events coming up this weekend. There's many celebrations, all with a historic theme. They would include a family bike ride, 5K and 10K walks, a petting zoo, wildflower walk, blacksmith demonstration, a presentation on Underground Railroad by noted author Glenette Tilly Turner, and dedications at the Main Street Cemetery recognizing Downers Grove part in the Underground Railroad and honoring our founder of the year, Israel Blodgett. There'll also be an educational seminar for vintage homeowners explaining the village's landmark program, and the final event on Sunday will be the dedication of the landmark and heritage site plaques at the Fairview train station, officiated by Mayor Tully. The golf outing that was scheduled for last weekend was rained out and has been moved to the May 13th date, so there's still time to register for that. Residents interested in knowing more about these events can go to our website at www.downersgrovehistory.org, or you can call me, Liz Cholberg, at 630-660-6767. We're hoping to see the whole community out to celebrate Downers Grove history. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you sharing that with everyone. Other questions or comments of a general nature from members of the audience? Good evening. Welcome.
Rich Calavani, 6825 Camden Road. And we do have a 3-slide PowerPoint presentation. Just to add to what Liz had said, we are actually hosting an event called Landmarking Your Historic Property in the Historic Program, which is being held on May 7th from 2 o'clock to 3:30 at the main auditorium in the Lincoln Center. And for those who live in what could be considered a heritage house, our group hand-delivered 956 of these. And so if you live in an older home and you receive something like this on the doorway, it was someone from our group that dropped it off for you. So we're going to be covering, Stan Popovich is going to be helping us out here to discuss the new historic preservation ordinance. I'll be talking about the myths and misconceptions of landmarking, and A.B. Gasson of the Historical Society will be presenting the complementary program in the historic home program. So we're also going to be going into what kind of tax incentives are available, either for individual homeowners or for business owners that are available for landmarking and restoring a home. We can talk about what kind of modifications someone could make to the home and the additions and things like that. And then finally, an explanation of how to research your home and what the historic home program is. So we'd really appreciate everyone attending. And as far as how to register for that, it is on the letter, but it is dg-landmark.eventbrite.com. So thank you very much for your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that, and both your comments as well as Ms. Chalberg's comments were most appropriate to share in May 2017, which we've just declared as Historic Preservation Month in the community. So thank you for that. Other questions or comments of a general nature from members of the audience? Yes, ma'am, please. If you can come down to the podium. Good evening. Welcome.
Good evening, respected members of the Downers Grove Council, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Violet Rodwell. I have been a resident of Downers Grove when the town was not like this. It was like a rural town. That was early part of 1992. And I love Downers Grove. Why am I here? I would like, because of my recent experience in regards to a fence surrounding the property, which my husband, who had passed away in 2007, happened last week. The fence, the property is surrounded by chain link fence. And according to Mr. Sandman and Mr. Williams, front of the house, the height is 4 feet. At the back, it's 6 feet. Well, 2.5 years ago, I came from work. I have to support myself. We never locked the gate. When I came home around past 10 o'clock, I saw a light of a car on the driveway. A guy came out, and I was by the side entrance, and he walked to me. And he wanted to take me with him. That was very scary because I live alone. I begged for my life, and I said, I would give everything what you need. Please don't kill me. Anyway, during that time that I was begging for my life, I prayed so hard to God, and the guy left me. The following day, I started locking the gate. And I got so scared. And then 2.5 months after that, I informed also NICOR and COMED about that happening. 2.5 months ago, NICOR gas did not come to read the meter. I called him up. Oh yes, he was there. He read, well, how did I, please send him back. So he came back. And he told me that he jumped over the fence so that he could read the meter. I got scared. What did I do? I asked my handyman to put slats of wood along that fence with nails. I was cited by the village. So it was fear. So I took out those nails, with the wood. And what's the next option that I did? I put 2 signs, no trespassing sign, in front of the property and at the side facing my neighbor. And then this is the drawing that I have made. And then I have not been feeling well since last month. So when I was my neighbor, 5020 Grand Avenue. I live on 5410 Grand Avenue. Wanted to talk to me. And she told me that I saw the sign, they were gone. And after that, she told me she saw rats and raccoons and other animals in my property and the van. And I said, how could those rats and animals like that? I have 4 big cats. They're out during the day, they would not leave. So anyway, I went to see Mr. Sandman and requested if I could increase the height from because from the base of the ground, 4 feet, that's the village requirement. The neighbor, when they built, during that time, everything, it was an empty lot. So, houses were built. So, the builder of that house next to our property, he built the driveway higher than my fence. So it's only 1 foot difference. So anybody who is on that driveway could jump easily on my property. Now, when I went to Mr. Sandman last Monday, the weather was nice. I came back. My carport with supporting structures of 2x4 wood for my pickup truck, I was only gone for 40 minutes. It was right and down to my driveway. I got scared. So I went back to Mr. Simon again, Tuesday. I said, please, I requested for a temporary fence. They told me, no, you cannot. It's 4 feet. It doesn't matter. Have a video surveillance. Yes, I did. I called up ADT. They do not install video surveillance cam exterior, only inside. So I called up a security firm. Yes, we could install only 1 screen, 1 eye. And it would cost you $1,050. I received $1,037 a month from Social Security. So I would be broke. My point is this: I told Mr. Sandman, if there is an ordinance, if we could amend the ordinance in case of emergency like this, amend only in case of emergency. I even asked for them to let me put a temporary fence while I am looking for a video surveillance who could put in. I said no. So now I have been living in fear. I live alone. I live in fear now that I have cars parked on my lot. They could just jump over the fence and then do harm on my vehicles. This is her driveway. It was raised too high. This is 5020 Grand Avenue. This is 5050. This is where I live. I think that now I live in Downers Grove that I love so much. I tell you, I live in fear. I cannot be outside like this dark. I do not know who is jumping. That's why I am here. If you could possibly, when it comes to construction of new residents, builders should not raise the driveway of the new residents, affecting the other property. Number 1. Number 2, allow, if it's the 4 feet rule or regulation should be maintained, nothing should be built beyond the 4 feet. Now, my fence is 4 feet, fine. But the driveway was higher, so it's only 1 foot. So that's why I am here. If you could amend, it's good for the residents of Downers Grove. I am here. I am only taking my chance to be able to inform you of what's happening, because Downers Grove is a safe community. But for people to do this, coming from Addis Ababa and have a means. That's why when I saw that fence was very high and the guy followed me. In fact, to be honest with you, ladies and gentlemen, I consider this is my second life. This is my second life, because that guy, I pray to God, if that guy had really not listened to me, I could be down under the ground. So I am here to request from you, if you could amend that. It would not hurt anybody in Downers Grove if you amend the Downers Grove ordinance. Two things.
Well, I'm sorry for the very horrifying experience that you described, but I think we understand the two issues that you've raised, and without the benefit of having time to have thought about it or looked into it, we can certainly see if there might be some possible situation that would be appropriate, but we can follow up with staff on that and see whether.
I thank you very
in these
much.
very unique circumstances, there may or may not be something to look at.
Yeah, I thank you all, because I am here only, I'm thinking, I said, in fact, Mrs. Summers said, well, it would not benefit you. I said, I know that. What I would be doing, it is good for the people down the road. Down the road. Not now, down the road.
I think we understand your point.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and thank you for the drawing. It was very helpful. Any other questions or comments of a general nature from anyone in the audience? Things not on tonight's agenda. Okay, seeing that there are none, and thank you for the folks that did speak, we're going to move to our active agenda and then our first reading agenda. But I want to just pause for a second and just comment on public comments, as I'm getting the sense that there's a number of people here that may want to speak on one or more of the items that are on those two agendas tonight. First of all, we normally have a 5-minute rule with respect to each speaker. I think in 6 years, I've enforced that twice. Normally, as you can see, if someone feels strongly about something and they want to come down here and speak to the village council, I think they should be able to. But in return, typically what I ask for is that everyone display respect and decorum for one another. If there are different opinions, no comments, no applause, or anything else like that. Also, please address your comments to the village council and not to the audience. I would ask that you do that, please. And then also, understanding there may be multiple people that want to make the same point. If one of your neighbors has made the same point and they've made it very well and you think that they articulated it well, we would just simply ask you, don't feel compelled to repeat it. We get the point. The fact that it's said 10 times as opposed to 1 time doesn't give it any more weight or any less weight. And that way, I think more people will have an opportunity to speak and won't have to wait as long to say what they have on their minds. So we would very much appreciate that cooperation from you in advance. And as I mentioned, I think twice in 6 years I've ever enforced the 5-minute rule because we really do want to hear what's on your mind and give you an opportunity to say it. So with that, we're going to first start out with our active agenda. The active agenda is different than the workshop agenda, just to give you some more idea of how things work. On the active agenda, typically we'll go through our process and then we'll ask for any questions from the audience and then we'll come back to the village council. Whereas on the workshop or the first reading, which is item 12, typically there, because these are new items that are coming up and there's no vote taking place tonight, we will ask for a presentation and then the council has an opportunity to ask questions and comments, and then we'll turn it over to the audience for questions and then come back. So those two parts of the agenda are a little bit different. So now you've got all the rules. There will be a test at the end, so I hope you were taking notes. On item 11, our active agenda, we have 4 items. We'll start with item 11, A as an apple. Do I have a motion to authorize a letter of intent with K. Hovnanian?
Martelli, I move that this council direct staff to execute a letter of intent with K. Hovnanian, including redevelopment key terms for the townhome development project on the Civic Center property as presented.
Thank you. Is there a second? The mayor cannot make motions or second motions, so hearing no second, that item fails for lack of a second. We'll move to item 11B as in boy. Do I have a motion to adopt an ordinance amending ordinance number 5491 and the Village of Downers Grove budget for fiscal year 2016?
Martelli, I move that this council adopt an ordinance providing for an amendment to ordinance 5491 and the Village of Downers Grove budget for fiscal year 2016 as presented.
Second.
Thank you. Questions or comments from the audience? Questions or comments from the village council on this item? Hearing none, may I have a roll call, please?
Commissioner White?
Aye.
Commissioner Waldrak?
Aye.
Commissioner Wallace?
Aye.
Commissioner Earl?
Aye.
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye. The matter passes unanimously. That brings us to item 11C as in Charlie. Do I have a motion to adopt a resolution approving the final plat of subdivision with an exception for 5527-5531 Fairmont Avenue?
Martelli, I move that this council adopt a resolution approving the final plat of subdivision with an exception for 5527 through 5531 Fairmont Avenue as presented.
Second.
Any questions or comments on this item from any members of the audience? Questions or comments from members of the Village Council? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Commissioner White?
Aye.
Commissioner Waldeck?
Aye.
Commissioner Wallace?
Aye.
Commissioner Earl?
Nay.
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye, the matter passes 6-1. And that brings us to the last item on our active agenda tonight, item 11D as in David. Do I have a motion to adopt an ordinance creating a liquor license classification for arts and crafts studios?
Mayor Tully, I move that this council adopt an ordinance creating a liquor license classification for arts and crafts studios as presented.
Second?
A motion and a second. Questions or comments from the audience? Questions or comments from members of the Village Council? Hearing none, may I have a roll call, please?
Commissioner White?
Aye.
Commissioner Waldeck?
Aye.
Commissioner Wallace?
Aye.
Commissioner Earl?
Aye.
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye, that matter passes unanimously, and that brings us to the end of our active agenda and to item 12, which is our first reading of our workshop agenda. And as mentioned, we have one item on the agenda here tonight. As mentioned, we do things a little bit differently since this is for presentation and discussion purposes only. No vote is taken this evening on this item. Typically, what I do is ask for our village manager, David Fieldman, or someone that he may designate to present the item, and then we'll open it up for discussion and questions from the village council, and then we'll turn it over for questions from the audience. So with that, Mr. Fieldman, good evening.
Good evening, Mayor Tully. Thank you. Tonight's first reading agenda consists of one item, which is an ordinance authorizing a special use for the property at 7221 Lamont Road regarding an animal boarding facility. And here to present background information on this petition is our Community Development Director, Stan Popovich.
Good evening, Mr. Popovich.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, council members. As Manager Fieldman noted, this is a special use for an animal boarding facility at 7221 Lamont Road. The property is in the southern part of town, here in the shopping center, along the curve of Lamont Road here, before it comes Main Street. If we zoom in on the property, it's the old Walgreens site there on the north side of the shopping center here, outlined in red and circled there as well. Well, if we look to a site plan here, the building is outlined in red, the space that they would be taking. There's no proposed changes to the exterior of the building, no significant changes to the exterior of the building. They would be occupying the former Walgreens site. The interior of the plan shows here in green a boarding facility. This is the special use that's required. There's an indoor play area, and the rest of the part of the inside of the building is grooming and administrative offices and other ancillary spaces. The big change on the outside of the building is we're going to relocate the entrance from the west facade to the north facade. So we will be taking out the entrance on the west side and then putting out the north facade there. So the primary entrance will be off the north there with the parking lot to the north as well. And then there's a proposed outdoor play area here on the east side of the building for dogs that are staying with the property during the day or overnight. The outdoor boarding area is planned to be closed at 6 p.m., so there'll be no dogs outside after 6 p.m. The play area, which is shown here in the circled area, includes a 6-foot-tall solid fence. The vinyl fence will include sound baffles above the fence and around the outdoor play area. So you can see sort of the line in the middle of that area going left to right there would be the top of the fence, and then the sound baffling would be above that as well. And then there is a roof on the facility as well on the outdoor play area. And then that's the east elevation. That would be the most significant change to the building there with the outdoor play area. The current comprehensive plan talks about that the property is neighborhood corridor commercial, which is a neighborhood-oriented commercial retail offices and service uses, serve the role for local residents and also provide goods to the larger region. With the updated comprehensive plan, the property is still a corridor commercial designation. It is part of the 75th Street focus area, and that area specifically talks about more screening and buffering to the residents, so for garbage enclosures, and then also for those areas to screen them and buffer them a little bit more. With regard to the zoning ordinance, the standards for special use have been met in this section as noted. If you have any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer those for you at this time. We also have Gabe Barwald here, who is the president and chief operating officer of Pete and Max, who has a presentation ready to present as well.
Very good. Thank you. Before we go to the presentation from the petitioner, are there any questions from the council at this juncture of the village staff? Okay, thank you. Then we'd welcome hearing from the petitioner. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Gabe Barwald. I'm the President and Chief Operating Officer of Pete and Max Pet Resorts. I just want to give you a brief overview of some of the general information. All of our locations are owned and operated by me and my company. We're not a franchise. We have no desire to franchise. We don't want to lose our standards. We will be hiring 20 to 25 local team members. All team members are American Red Cross certified in pet CPR and first aid, and they receive ongoing animal behavior training. Tours are available during our lobby hours. We welcome anybody anytime the lobby is open. There's no appointment necessary. We like to show off what we do. Staff is on site 24 hours a day. We never leave the dogs alone. You know, we kind of like to say if you wanted them alone, you would have left them at home. But that doesn't say that people are going in and out of our building 24 hours a day. There is no checking out or checking in after the lobby is closed. It's just that somebody's there for the general health. We do a lot of security in the resort. We have a trained pet guardian, again, on board 24 hours a day. We install closed circuit surveillance TV so that we can keep an eye from anywhere in the building. We have emergency evacuation plans that we customize to the local codes. We keep an emergency transportation vehicle on site at all times in case we have an emergency in the evening. The outside play area has 6-foot walls, and it assures that the pets can't get out, but also serves as an emergency evacuation area in the unlikely case of a fire or other hazard. And as I had mentioned, in the event of an illness, we transport either to the person's local veterinarian if they're open, or to an emergency animal center. What we do lodging, which is long-term, short-term. We do daycare, which is obviously like kid daycare. You drop them off on your way to work, pick them up on your way home. We also do theme parties, fun things within daycare. We have a full-service spa, so basically that's grooming, and we do pet education. Something that we do a lot different than anybody I've ever run into in the 17 years we've done business is we actually build all of our rooms. We don't call them cages, we don't call it a kennel. The rooms are built out of glass block, just like the glass tile you'd use at your home. And what we have found is that it helps to avoid injuries associated with fencing and bars, and according to the Pet Care Services Association, who rules our world, glass block is cleaner and more sanitary. We also use hospital-grade, EPA-registered products to do all of our cleaning. And we actually have a ventilation system that we will do that will turn the air 4 to 6 times per hour. And in a normal building, they'll turn 4 times per day. So our goal is always to have, you know, a stress-free, odor-free, clean environment. You know, my business can't sustain if we don't meet those simple qualifications. And I'm sorry, I forgot to mention that we do also have an automatic flush system that we will build into the building. It's a trench drain system. This is just a picture of it, and it will be down all the boarding rows. We'll also do it out in the outdoor daycare. We install this in the floor, and we set it up with an automatic flush system so that the waste is continually being taken out of the building into the city sewer system. Again, it's all about odor-free. Daycare. This is a part of the business that we've seen grow dramatically. We know that 54% of pet owners desire professional service as an alternative to leaving them home unattended all day. Our specially trained staff interacts and stimulates the pets. We want to be able to give you a tired pet when you come to pick them up. In the outdoor area, like Stan had mentioned, you know, we are doing some things to make sure the noise doesn't go out, but we also will install turf so that it's easier on the dog's pads. Again, it's easier to clean, and we can make it germ-free. And all of our daycare areas are covered, they're heated, misted, and fanned for year-round comfort. And then just a little bit about our grooming and training. You know, we have a full-service spa, so you can come for a day of beauty and play, and then we do offer all types of training programs. In our presentation last month to the City Planning Commission, we did hear everybody loud and clear, no pun intended, that the concern is noise, and we can appreciate that. So what we did, we commissioned actually a noise study, and that took place Wednesday, April 26th, at our resort in Avondale, Arizona. And it was done by MD Acoustics, who's done over 3,500 of these noise-related projects. The way it was set up, 2 sound meters were installed. Location 1 was actually within the play area with the dogs, hung in there. The location 2 was approximately 8 feet outside the fenced area. Now, I will say too, this does not have noise baffles, as we're proposing for the one here. Now, noise levels were recorded from our daycare time from 8 to 3, and the meters were set to record 1 second by 1 second levels, hourly average noise levels, and minimum and max experienced during the time. As I said, this daycare doesn't have sound baffles. It actually has a 3-foot opening between the top of the fence and the roof. There were 43 large breed dogs in the area during the duration. And what we found, location 1, again, inside the play area, hourly average noise levels range from 57.4 to 79 dBA. Outside, again, just 8 feet outside the daycare area, the range was 54 to 64.8. And what that tells us is noise levels are approximately 13 to 18 dBA quieter, just 8 foot away. And just to do some comparative examples of noise levels, I just wanted to list these so that people see we fall in the range of, very similar conversations we have. A thunderclap is 120. An air impact wrench, which is similar to what the NTB that would be beside us, is about 105 NBAs. Lawnmower garbage truck, 100 dBAs. A diesel truck idling at 50 feet is 84. And again, this is just showing the area. And actually, we have a sound baffle, if anybody wants to look at it, that we will be hanging, again, from the top of the fence line to the top of the roof line. And we appreciate your time and consideration. We'd love to be a part of Downers Grove.
Thank you for the presentation. I just have one question before I turn to my colleagues to see if they have questions for you. The April 26th, 2017 sound evaluation that you just described,
Yes,
is
sir.
that part of the record? We don't have that yet, I assume, because it's so recent?
Well, I do have it here, so
I'd love to see that, please.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
yes.
Actually, if you have a copy, you can hand it to Mr. Baker, who's right to your left there. Thank you. And then I have a follow-up question for staff, but I'll ask if my colleagues have questions of the petitioner.
Could you tell me what your lobby hours are?
Sure, we're open Monday through Friday, 6:30 a.m. to 7 p.m. Saturday, we're open from 8 to 5, and Sunday, we're open 8 to 6.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions of the petitioner? Thank you.
And I'm sorry, if I could add just one more thing, because I
Sure.
know that part of the discussion previously was that the concerns that the Shop and Save, who would be our neighbors, would have a concern with a business like ours moving in. And again, we can make this part of the record because, again, it was just received, but our realtor representative, this comes from the controller of Shop and Save, and it said, "The passage by the Planning Commission is great news. The ownership of Shop and Save Market reviewed the plans for this business and look forward to having them as a thriving business neighbor. Please let us know when they will begin construction. If Pete and Max General Contractor or ownership would like to meet with the store management to coordinate the timing of any special deliveries or construction work, it would be my pleasure to set up those introductions. Thank you again for keeping us aware of the status of this exciting addition to the shopping center." And that's Kenneth O'Connor, Controller. Thank you.
Thank you. obviously, we may have more questions as the evening progresses, but I wanted to address one to Stan. I should have earlier, but oh, there you are, sorry. I understand that this is a special use request because it is specifically listed in our code as an allowable special use and therefore is treated as a special use.
That's correct.
Okay. Question I have is, and I didn't look this up beforehand, but if this were not a boarding facility, let's say it was a pet store that also had boarding and grooming facilities in it, like we have others within the community, would that also require a special use?
It's the boarding that requires a special use. So if you have a pet store and you're selling pet food, or if you're having a grooming facility, that would just be a permitted use in the zoning district.
Okay, so grooming is permitted, but boarding, because of the overnight aspect, is what puts it in the category of a special use?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Please, Commissioner.
Thank you, Mayor. And just to follow up on that, and forgive me for not looking this up ahead of time, but is boarding under our code only overnight? Or would you be allowed, without a special use, to have the animals on site during the day?
I don't believe that there's a specific definition behind it that would classify it as overnight, but we would classify it as any time that you're leaving your dog there for an extended period of time without other services. So if you're grooming your dog and you drop it off with the intent of picking it up after its appointment, then that would fall under grooming. But if you're intending to drop it off and leave it there for the day or an overnight, that would fall into the boarding category.
So the daycare aspect would be boarding as well?
That's correct.
I see. One additional question for you, Stan. We've got a few of similar businesses in town. Do we ever have any noise complaints with regard to those businesses?
I have not received any.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other questions of staff or the petitioner before I open it up to input from the audience? Okay, well, obviously, we'll have the opportunity to ask questions after we hear from members of the public. Thank you, Stan. With that, I would like to open it up for questions or comments from members of the audience. The protocol is please come down to the podium, tell us who you are, and we welcome hearing from you. Good evening. Welcome.
Good evening. Okay, I'm Marvin Shar. I live at 909 Rob Roy Place in Downers. I've lived there with my wife Dawn for 31 years. I have a handout and a copy of a petition. So I'll wait a second until they're passed out.
Thank you.
I will try very hard to be respectful of your time rule. My wife has kindly delegated to me her 5 minutes, so I promise that I will be done shortly after 10 minutes.
There's probably an inappropriate joke in there somewhere, but I'll stay away from it. Please.
Thank you. My wife and I have lived here at Downers for the past 31 years. I come here tonight to speak on behalf of myself and my wife and others in the neighborhood. I come here to oppose this proposal as presently drafted for approval of a special use for the animal boarding at 7221 Lamont Road. I have presented a petition signed by 179 residents of our neighborhood. This petition asks the council to reject the proposal as presently drafted. While there are several potential issues related to this proposal, tonight I will address our key concern, which is on page 2 of my handout, and is noise. As stated in our petition, the reason for our opposition is that this proposal provides for the creation of an outdoor play area enclosed by a fence, which will be located east of the existing building. The play area will house up to 35 larger breed dogs and will be operated from 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. and noon to 6 p.m. 7 days a week. The noise from this outdoor play area will be significantly detrimental to me, my wife, and other residents in the vicinity. Further, this noise will be injurious to our property values. This is not simply a proposal for a few dogs for a limited time each week. It is a proposal for up to 35 dogs for up to 70 hours a week. As you can see from the 79 signatures on the petition, there are a large number of people in the neighborhood who are opposed to Pete and Mac's proposal, and the reason for it is the harm caused by the noise from the outdoor play area. You, the council, have a very important decision to make tonight, because this is not just a trial balloon. Once this proposal is approved, it will be permanent. There will be no turning back, and the residents will be faced with addressing problems through code enforcement. So I urge you as commissioners to consider this carefully and ask yourself, is this really the right location for an outdoor play area? Turning now to page 3 of my handout. Many of us have lived in this neighborhood for many years, in our case, 31 years. We bought our homes and improved them with no dog boarding facility nearby. Unfortunately, there are many homes in the area which will be adversely affected by the noise from the outdoor play area. The old Walgreens is at the end of the mall and is surrounded by a horseshoe of residents living in homes and townhomes. The sound of barking dogs, up to 35 of them, will travel widely. Old Main Street, Pinewood Drive, Applegate, Webster, Rob Roy Place, Old Orchard, Orchard Place, 72nd, and Lyman are among the streets where residents will be significantly affected. In that regard, it is noteworthy that residents living on each of these streets either appeared at the Plan Commission, sent emails, and/or signed the petition that we've submitted tonight in opposition to this proposal. Many of them are here tonight as well. I wanted especially to mention the approximately 24 homes and townhomes on Old Main Street and Pinewood Drive, which are directly across from the outdoor play area and view it directly. There are no homes or other buildings between the outdoor play area and these 24 homes. The sound of the barking dogs will go directly to them. If you look at page 4 of my handout, I included 2 pictures. The first was taken by the front yard of the home at 7225 Old Main Street. The second was taken at the backyard of the townhome on 1043 Pinewood Drive. As you can see, both are directly facing the back of the Walgreens where the outdoor play area will be located. And there are, in addition to these 2 homes, there are an additional 22 homes and townhomes just like them. The sound of the barking dogs will go directly to these homes. I wanted to comment briefly on the outdoor play area. And there's a little bit confusion. I believe that what has been said is that the baffles will be from the fence, from the top of the fence to the top of this, rather than down at the bottom by the fence, but that's my understanding. The proposed play area is surrounded by a plastic fence and covered by a PVC plastic roof. Between the fence and the roof are baffles. There are serious questions about this outdoor plan, but I wanted to particularly comment on the baffles. Pete and Max emphasized that before the Plan Commission and its comments tonight, that they are going to use baffles. However, we checked with ATS, the company which manufactures the baffles, as indicated in the attachment that they've made, and they said the baffles are solely for use inside and should not be used outside. They said that when wet, they will mold, thereby destroying their insulation material. Is Pete and Max planning to replace the baffles whenever it rains? Thus, an important fact provided to the Plan Commission when it came to its decision recommending approval, the use of protective baffles, is now in doubt. Turning now to page 5 of my handout, I want to speak briefly about the 3 criteria for approving a special use. The first criteria has, of course, been met. The second criterion is that the proposed use is necessary or desirable to provide a service that's needed in the neighborhood. Pete and Mac asserts that this criterion is met because the proposed boarding business meets a community need for dog boarding services. But even assuming this is true, is it necessary to have an outdoor play area for 35 larger breed dogs 9 hours a day in order to provide such services? No. The company could provide the same service to the community if instead of using an outdoor play area, they used only indoor play areas, either within the existing building or in an enclosed addition to the building. As an example, The PetSmart boarding facility at 75th Street in Lyman utilizes solely indoor play facilities. It has 4 of them inside, and PetSmart provides quality boarding services. In fact, nationally, PetSmart has 204 boarding locations. So while Pete and Max may satisfy the second criterion of providing a needed service, they could provide an equivalent service if they replace the outdoor play area with an indoor one. Turning now to page 6 of my handout. The third criterion is that the proposed use will not be detrimental to the health, safety, or general welfare of the residents residing in the vicinity or be injurious to their property values. This standard is a broad standard which gives the council latitude to protect residents in the vicinity from harm. In evaluating that criterion, you as a council don't just look to the welfare of the shopping center owner who is getting a tenant, you look to the welfare of all the residents in the vicinity. In this case, the council has clear evidence that this outdoor play area is detrimental to the welfare of the residents in the vicinity. What is that evidence? You have a petition signed by 179 residents in the vicinity saying so, and you have people here tonight as well. I and the other 178 residents who signed this petition are stating to you clearly, this third criterion is not met. The company's proposal as drafted is significantly detrimental to our welfare. The noise from the outside play area 9 hours a day, or 10 hours a day, 7 days a week, will be harmful to us and injurious to our property values. While each request for special use stands on its own, and I'm almost done, I wanted to comment briefly on 2 other boarding requests the council has considered in the past 2 years. The one at 63rd Street and the Doggy Depot facility on Maple. The request at 63rd Street was for a veterinary facility. In that case, after much deliberation, the council approved the request. But in that case, unlike this one, the outdoor use was very limited, typically 5 to 7 dogs at a time, not 35 dogs. Further, the dogs would go outside not for play, but for potty breaks, much quicker, much quicker. The play times at 63rd Street occur solely inside. It's a very different case from the one you're looking at tonight. The second recent request was at 421 Maple, the facility to replace one of the Doggy Depot buildings. Once again, that case is clearly distinguishable from the present instance. The facility on Maple is located right at the BNSF track in a light industrial area. Nearly all of its activities will be conducted indoors, as the facility will use 4 indoor play areas and 1 small outdoor play area. In this case, Pete and Max is proposing 2 play areas, 1 inside and 1 outside. Most significant, however, is the fact in the Doggy Depot case, no residents objected. No one appeared at the Plan Commission meeting or the 2 village council meetings to object. Under those circumstances, unlike this case, it was reasonable and appropriate for the council to conclude that the request was not detrimental to the welfare of the residents in the vicinity. Thus, this case is very different as well. Before I conclude, and on page 7, I just wanted to comment briefly. Obviously, we've not looked at the sound study that the petitioner put forth. The other point I'd make is, assuming the bona fides of that study, that's the whole issue. We're dealing with a residential area which has never had a dog boarding facility. Whether it's 64 decibels or 62 decibels or 61 decibels, this community will be harmed. We've lived all these years in close proximity to each other and lived with the noise ordinance, protections of the noise ordinance. If this proposal is approved, now we will be under the zoning provision and the much, much higher standard of noise, and it will be very, very detrimental to us. In conclusion, turning to page 7 of my handout, For the reasons I've discussed, my wife and I, and the others I'm speaking for tonight, respectfully request that this proposal as drafted be denied. However, if the proposal were modified to include only indoor play facilities, we would not oppose it. With that modification, the harm caused by the noise emanating from an outdoor facility would be eliminated, and if in fact dog boarding services are needed at this location, they would still be provided just solely indoors. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Scher. Appreciate your very thoughtful presentation.
Thank you. One other quick administrative question for you all. So I know that there are a number of people in the audience who don't want to come up and speak, but they would like to register their opinion that they are opposed to the proposal as requested. How would you like that done? Would you ask me to, would you want me to get a show of hands?
I'm guessing they've all signed this.
Okay.
I
Is
think
there
you
any
made
other
your point.
confirmation you need?
I trust you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
But please, no applause, because otherwise you have to applaud. You didn't applaud the petitioner. Let's be fair to one another.
And remember, I took my wife's time, so no applause is appropriate.
That was a good one. I don't want to shortcut anybody else's comments, but I do want to just kind of cut to the chase here. I think a number of my colleagues are probably thinking the same thing. What does our ordinance say is the noise level that has to be maintained at, whether it's the property line or it's the west side of Main Street? I mean, that's a question I would have, because it seems to me this is about noise, and it's 65, and that's for everybody. I mean, if we had a daycare center here, you had kids running around, it'd be the same thing.
That's correct.
To me, 'cause the only reason I ask is because that's an objective measure. It's not what we think it might be, what it could be. It's not what it is in Arizona. It's one of the things that we can do on any special use is grant a special use with conditions that ameliorate whatever the concern is. And this is something we do all the time. Screening, noise baffling, light issues, you name it. Just think of Ogden Avenue where there's car dealerships and there's people who live a lot closer to the car dealerships than you folks do. And we address that all the time. So one of the things I'm thinking, and I'm just saying this because maybe it'll help a little bit in the comments, is it's possible that a special use can be granted with conditions that say you must meet certain objective criteria as measured in scientific ways at a certain point. And if you don't do that, you lose your special use. And I'm not suggesting that's where I'm going with this, but I just want to throw that out as something that takes a lot of the speculation out of it. And we don't have to rely upon promises or what the situation might be. There are things like screening that you can block things, and we already have an ordinance that says that thou shalt not exceed a certain decibel at a certain point. I mean, that's just an objective way of dealing with it. Then it's not. And I understand one way to do that would be to keep it indoors, but quite frankly, things could be as loud indoors as they could be outside. What you're really concerned about is the noise level, period.
But Mr. Mayor, I think there's 2 points there. We are wanting to help get this thing going.
Right.
That's why the handshake on the last slide. The control of the noise, if it's indoors, from the point of view of the vast, overwhelming majority of the people in this room would be okay.
Sure.
The other point I would make is, and we don't at the present time, but we've had dogs almost all our married life and love dogs. Dog barking is very loud. I can't tell you why, but it is. And so...
You haven't seen my kids when they were younger. My point is this, is that loud is a subjective term. A decibel number is objective. And all I'm saying is that one thing that is possible is to say that the decibels cannot go more than X, and the petitioner has to figure out how to do that. They can put it inside, they can... It's the 21st century. We have the technology. We can do these things.
I understand. Again, and I'm not trying to say things inappropriately, but if you compare this with 63rd Street, this is a big deal they're proposing. Their business model, respectfully, is one of 35 dogs outside almost all the time.
Right.
Because that's their vision of how to best care for the dogs. I understand that. What we're saying is, fine, if that's your business model, but please do it indoors.
Oh, understood. And we're not, you also understand that we're not here to pass judgment on people's business models. And whether, if this was a daycare center, the kids had to be inside as opposed to being outside. I don't want to draw a comparison between kids and dogs. What I'm focusing on is there are objective criteria that no one could argue whether it's loud or not. It is measurable.
The other point, and people will get to this, I'm sure, for those poor unfortunate souls, the 24 houses, it's going to be a very significant issue and a potentially very significant issue on property values and resale. It just is.
Understood, although also understand that there's probably a lot of other uses that are allowed by right in there that someone could say the same thing about.
Yes, but we're addressing one specific.
I understand, but again, it goes to not the use. You can see why I'm trying to steer this towards an objective criteria, I hope. That there's a measurable noise level, and if it can't exceed that, then that is objective criteria.
I understand,
Otherwise, we're dealing with subjectiveness, and that's not something that gets a lot more difficult.
And-
But anyway, point well taken.
And on the other hand, looking at the criteria you have, you would have to, the question is this significantly detrimental to general welfare? And obviously, for 179
Sure.
people, it is.
And I understand that and fully appreciate that and respect that. But again, in our code, we have already determined what that level is with our noise ordinance. So rather than what people think, which we could have 178 people with different opinions as to what that is, the code says it's here. So there's no argument about, I disagree with Commissioner Wallace.
My poor wife has listened to me think about this. The provision in the ordinance, the 3 special use criteria are in there for a reason. And the reason is that it gives you an opportunity to look at the welfare of the residents. And so
Absolutely.
I agree totally that there is an objective standard in the zoning provision with regard to the 64 decibels outside, the leakage out to R2. Definitely true. But the question is, there's an independent provision in your ordinance that gives you a latitude to look and say, what's in the best interest, what's in the welfare of the residents.
Absolutely. And welfare is a very difficult concept to measure, which is why we look towards objective criteria, because objectivity is usually more equitable and fair to everybody, and it doesn't pick winners and losers. And I'm not suggesting anything other than we have the ability in granting we can either grant a special use, we can deny a special use, or we can grant a special use with conditions that are designed to address the concerns about the welfare of the community.
Right.
And again, we're not deciding anything tonight.
I
I'm just
understand.
having a
I understand.
conversation, asking questions.
Right.
The only reason I even made the comment is not to cut off anybody's discussion, is I just wanted to throw that out there, and I'll stop talking.
And from our perspective, just put in one condition, it's inside.
Well, I understand that that's the solution that you're proposing. All I'm suggesting is that there may be other ways to get to the same place.
I understand what you're saying.
That's all.
Thank you. And
Thank
thank you. And thank you very much for your time.
No, thank you. I appreciate the very thoughtful and well-put-together presentation. It's very persuasive. Thank you. Other questions or comments from members of the audience? Ladies first.
Hi, I'm Jody Andrews.
Welcome.
My address is 7225 Main Street. One of the pictures in your handout, I believe, is from my yard. So I wanted to kind of go over personally what my concerns are with this issue. Because we've recently done renovations on our home, trying to increase the value of our home and make things look better for the neighborhood, that kind of thing. We spend a lot of time on our new deck, which we enjoy. And we are dog owners. We love dogs. Sometimes feels like a boarding facility at my house. But we are, my dogs bark, and if they hear other dogs, if they hear the neighbor's dog across the way, there's a barking match going on. So my dogs then come inside. If they hear 35 or however many dogs are outside at any time across the way, that could be a bigger issue. I can't, my dogs aren't out constantly, but they go in and out. So I need to be able to let them do that. If my dogs are barking all the time, or my neighbor is it gonna cause strife with my very kind neighbors who, we've met since we've lived here for the last 3 years. Our home is probably the most directly affected as far as our front yard looks into the back of this facility, the proposed facility. And just a field is kind of in between us, an open field. So my concerns are, again, the noise, and I know we've already discussed that. Potential odors in the summer, I don't know. I mean, that's also been discussed. My husband and I both work from home, so if the noise does become an issue, what's our recourse? What can we do about that? We work from home, or I work from home, he sometimes works from home. So it could become a big issue. And like I said, we're dog owners and we're dog lovers, but my family does not find a need for this particular facility because, it could potentially harm our property values and kind of cancel out all the work that we've done to improve our property values. And again, that's speculation and guessing, and it's not a fact, but what if somebody, it comes time for us to sell and somebody hears the barking or, sees that there's a dog facility there and doesn't, wish to purchase it. So those are some of my concerns for this particular issue. That's all I have.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Did you want to go, sir? Or I think he's a true gentleman. Good evening, welcome.
I support all of the commentary that you've heard so far from the people that are objecting to this. I'm a local resident, and I've been a resident of Downers Grove for over 40 years. Now, you can debate all kinds of things about the sound levels here, but unless you're going to measure them 24 hours a day, when those dogs are out there, you don't know when it's going to go up and down. Secondarily, if this proposal was being made to put this facility, this outdoor facility, across the street from Downers North High School or Downers South High School or a elementary school, the Downers Grove School Board would go nuclear. There's no way they're going to teach algebra and trigonometry with barks coming through the glass. Also, there is a facility about 200 feet away for special cases of families that are in trauma, where women have experienced abuse and their children have experienced abuse, and they go there and they stay there as the last place for safety. And when you have little children that have to take a nap that are already traumatized, and you got a barking dog, or 35 of them, and they can't even, after going through what they've gone through, they can't even take an afternoon or a morning nap, that's ridiculous. I have, in my neighborhood, I'm only a couple blocks from this, I have a neighbor with 2 dogs, and he lets them out in the backyard. And I'm going to tell you something, you can hear those 2 dogs over the whole block. And we kid each other, and we give them a hard time, and nobody does anything else because it's just his 2 pet dogs. You put 35 dogs out. I don't care what the baffles look like. I don't care what the measurements look like. I'm going to tell you something. Everybody for 5 blocks is going to hear those dogs. Now, gentlemen, ladies, your responsibility, far be it for me to preach to you, but your responsibility is to the residents of Downers Grove, not to a business, not to development, not to filling up an old Walgreens store. It's to the residents. And the other side of the coin is, people here have mentioned property values. Some people sometimes, for a mix of reasons, have to sell a house. You put this facility in, and it doesn't matter what the noise measurements are, because somebody that is looking for a house sees this thing, and it's what's in their mind, and the first thing they say is, I don't want to be around something like this. And all of a sudden, you can't sell the house. There's ramifications to all of this that are multifold. But if you wanted, as I said, if you wanted to do this near one of the public schools in Downers Grove or in one of the religious schools, the school boards would be here with their lawyers. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I'm
Excuse
sorry,
me,
I don't
sir.
think we caught your name.
Thank you.
My name is Alan Fisher.
Thank you, sir. For the record, that's important. Appreciate it. Thank you for
Okay.
being here. Otherwise, the comment will be described to an anonymous person with a Michigan jacket.
Actually, I live in Aurora.
Those comments will be stricken from the record. Good evening. Welcome,
Can we strike
ma'am.
the Michigan jacket, too?
Hi, good evening. My name is Cindy Torrey, and I live at 7217 Webster Street. And the reason I'd like to talk tonight is I've been very involved in those petitions that you just received. I've spent many, many, many hours just listening to people, talking, just listening, and hear what they have to say about about what's going on. And so what I'd like to do tonight is just pass on to you what I heard from all of them. And boy, and it's been hours of just listening. And here it is. Here's basically just a summary of everything I heard. Several people mentioned, like you just heard, that they built their homes there many, many years ago. And they were really upset about the noise that the facility would bring in. But one of the things they really talked about was they were retiring, a lot of these people. They were nearing retirement, and they were very concerned about how that was going to affect their home values. Were they going to be able to sell their homes? Conversely, I talked to people that just moved in the neighborhood, and they felt the same way. They said, hey, we just made a big investment here. And there were several that were like buyer's remorse, thinking that through, very concerned about it. A very interesting comment, and I got this comment from probably 9 out of 10 people I talked to, and I'll read it to you. What an inappropriate spot for this. Why do they want animals? Why do they want to put animals outdoors across from a residential area? How inappropriate. I heard that from 9 out of 10 people. That was like one of the first comments, like, how inappropriate. Another area that lots of people mentioned is the design of our neighborhood. So our houses back up to each other, and it goes down in kind of a gully. And the gully is there for drainage. And it works great, but it really carries all the sound all the way across the whole area. So a lot of people talked about that design of our neighborhood. And maybe it's just particular to our neighborhood, but it's all those blocks around there. And lots of people, like this fellow just talked, 1 or 2 dogs will bark, and they'll hear it. And they said, now what's going to happen when we have all these dogs barking? So that's particular to the design. I don't know what it's like in Arizona, but that's what our neighborhood is like. And it carries. So our design is completely different than maybe the sound test that we're taking somewhere else. A few residents actually experienced living around such facilities in the past. One stated that the barking noise carried as much as 7 blocks away. Lots of people commented about the barking, and the comment was this: it's not like other noise. I know you can measure other noise, but a lot of people said this was the most irritating noise. It's like a baby crying in your ear all day. It's barking. It's not just regular noise. And a lot of people talked about that. Let's see. One person commented in saying they felt like this was putting agricultural use into a residential area. Again, one of the big concerns was property. One of the comments that came up all the time, that just came up, is, I'm selling my house. What if the noise is heard? They're not going to buy my house. That was like a huge concern. Okay. Other comments. Lots of people just talk about the simple things, like they just want to be able to open their windows, they want to sit out on their patio, they want to have a peaceful Sunday morning, they don't want to hear barking. People did talk about the grocery store, they talked about it being adjacent to the facility and about the cleanliness and the odor, those things all came up too. Almost everybody talked about why an outdoor area? Why the dogs outside? You know, it would be okay. We can deal with the indoor. We don't have to hear the barking. We feel okay with that. We can manage, you know, anything that's indoor. But another really interesting thing came up. Well, an interesting thing through all my conversations with all these people. Not one person told me they were excited about it. Not one. I mean, they could have. That one person said, I am just thrilled about this and I can't wait to use this facility. I never heard it from anybody, and they could have. So nobody said that. So I guess in summary, while there were lots of concerns, the one that I heard over and over was the noise, the property value, and the consensus just seemed to be to the outdoor facility and the barking dogs every day of the week. So that's a summary of that. As for me and my husband, we live on Webster Street. Our house faces directly down Applegate. We face the back of the facility, the outdoor facility. And we feel it would be detrimental to us. We're okay with an indoor facility. We are not okay with the outdoor facility. And we are asking you to please vote no. Thank you very much.
Thank you for sharing your comments and also summarizing the views of others in your neighborhood. Appreciate that. Good evening, sir. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor, distinguished council members. Jeff McGill, 1040 Pinewood Drive. I reside 2 townhouses shy of being most proximal to the entryway of the proposed facility. So I'm going to go beyond Mr. Shar and my concern that it's not just the noise of the outdoor play area, but dogs are going to be dropped off, barking dogs will be dropped off starting at 6:30 a.m. in the morning, about a couple hundred feet from where we reside. 5 days a week, 8 a.m. on the weekend. Mr. Jose, you mentioned something about your dedication to the children and grandchildren of Downers Grove. I feel the same way. I applaud that. But let's not forget senior citizens as well. And this is kind of another thing that's maybe a bit unique about this location, is there is a plethora of senior citizens. It just happened, we're in townhouses. The point being, we're home during the day. This isn't a community where you have 2 working spouses that are going to be, you know, the kids are in school and people are away from. We're going to be home during these hours, that the designated hours for the outdoor play. So I think that's makes this a bit of a unique circumstance in some respects. The grocery store. They quoted a letter from the controller of the grocery business. When we were first faced with this, what I think is a terrible challenge for us, I went to the grocery store and I talked to a couple of the managers and a couple of department managers and a store manager. All voiced a serious concern about this. Ultimately, all 3 said, "What can we do?" My feeling is, the landlord is the same for the proposed property and for the grocery store. If I had to face lease renewal, I would be a bit reticent as to how much I wanted to challenge this. Grocery store, outdoor play area, literally feet away, their loading dock from an outdoor play area, literally closer than we are to each other at this point. There are canine pathogens, canine parasites. That is too much of a risk for that business. I will speak on their behalf, even if they're not here. I'm concerned as a patron of the store. I solicited signatures as well, and 3 people out of 20 volunteered that they weren't sure they even wanted to shop at that store anymore, knowing that there would be 88 dogs potentially in that facility. You can say all you want about mitigating efforts as far as sanitation, as far as noise, but perception is reality in this case. Because the third criteria that we spoke about has to do with whether our property values are adversely affected. Now, this is not California, but I just want to submit to the council that California real estate law requires disclosure of proximal kennels, just as you are required to disclose a leaky basement. In California, if there's a proximal kennel, that, before that transaction can take place, that has to be disclosed. Point being, California recognizes this as something that is detrimental to property value. There's no disputing that. Indeed, we want to apply objective standards, but in this case, when we're talking about property value, it is profoundly subjective. The fact that we have, certainly thus far, no support, we didn't have any support, significant support for this facility from the community, that is effectively your real estate response. We are potential sellers. Believe me, the buyers are going to be more, subjected to even more scrutiny. There is no question that our property values are adversely affected. In the little bit of research that I was able to do, it quoted a number of times that the perception of one barking dog can be a 5 to 10% reduction in property value. That's one barking dog, as it tends to affect the buyer. What else do we have to say here? Forgive me for not being quite as academic as Mr. Shar here. I admire his preparation. Okay, well, just to finish, I think the business plan, I said before, I said at the Planning Commission, I'm not here to criticize the business plan or the individuals that are promoting it. I believe in free enterprise. Certainly the commercial base of Downers Grove is a very positive feature of this town. We should all be proud of it. We benefit from it. But I think we're talking about special use. And there is an unusual burden to be shouldered by this type of business. And it relates to physical plant and, more importantly, site selection. I have to tell you, I think that part of the burden has not been shouldered adequately here. This is just too marginal. There are areas within Downers Grove that would serve much better. You know, if it's a cost-cutting measure on the part of the business owners, you know, I understand the motivation. Certainly, we're human beings, but it should not be done at our expense.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your comments. Other questions, comments from members of the audience? Good evening, ma'am. Welcome.
Good evening. It's been about 8 or 10 years since I've addressed the council before, and it happened to be for the domestic violence shelter when I spoke in favor of it. So I just want the council to know that I, Shelby Vogren, from 933 73rd Street, am not an anti-person, but I am totally opposed to this project next to a grocery store. And the last speaker just mentioned this fact. The vermin and whatnot that comes from this type of an establishment has absolutely no business next to a grocery store or a restaurant or sharing walls with them. My aunt and uncle spent a week in the hospital and almost died from food poisoning from eating in a restaurant next to a pet store. There were 30 people that became quite ill, and the investigators eventually showed that the fleas, the germs, the vermin, whatever you want to call it, I think the other gentleman was a little more versed in this biology, entered airborne through the walls into the adjacent facilities. So I'm concerned, number one, about safety. I will not shop at Shop and Save any longer if this pet store goes in there. It's a beautiful plan, and I'm not opposed to the plan. I think that the location is the absolute worst place that it could be. Safety for the food users, safety for the truck drivers. I don't know if you've done a traffic safety deal here. The area right behind Shop and Save is very small. Only one semi can get in there. There are 6 or 8 semis at a time that come in to deliver food and whatever else they're delivering there. And they also come into the area that is projected for the play lot. That's where they do their turning around. That's where they wait. I don't know if anybody has looked into this at all. Had I been able with a camera, I would have taken some pictures for you. Shop and Save also has all kinds of cartons and crates along that wall that is projected to be play area. So I'm concerned about the safety. I think it's a horrendous location for an animal or pet store of any kind Even though the plans may be good, this is not the location for it. I'm firmly against it, even if it has all indoor play. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. And I do remember when the other facility was proposed, and there was a fair amount of division in the neighborhood back then, too. Good evening. Welcome.
Good evening. My name is Jerry Holman. I live at 834 72nd Street. My wife, Adrienne, and I have been there for 23 years. I think I want to take a little brief diversion here from what other speakers have covered so far. You've heard a lot about property values, and just give you a picture of our neighborhood. And I think the best thing to characterize is that if you came and visited us either on Memorial Day weekend, Labor Day weekend, or the 4th of July, you would find a number of streets in the area that have flags, little flags planted in the parkway. And it's just symbolic, really, of the very tight-knit nature of our neighborhood, as well as the value that people put in their homes, the quiet area that we have, and all that we cherish about where we live and what we're trying to preserve. Because we, my wife and I, believe strongly that this will affect property values for all the reasons that you've heard already, we have signed the petition and support it and oppose the project as described. Our main but not only objection to this is the sound factor. Many other speakers have spoken about sound, potentially what 35 dogs can generate. I don't want to dwell on that on end, as other people have covered so well to this point, but I think I would like to say that I'm actually a very objective, technically oriented person, and I can appreciate the importance of trying to look at things objectively, but the dog bark to me it's a very different thing, as was alluded to by the other gentleman, and that is I could listen to a sewing machine humming away at 50 decibels, so pick your number, it doesn't matter, but a dog bark is an entirely different thing, and I think that's why you hear that property values are affected, and demonstrably, as noted, the requirements in California law about disclosure of home sales. So I don't think it's arguable that it could affect property values, and that for that reason it doesn't satisfy the third criterion of the special use evaluation. But I think I also would look at it in terms of the comparability of what's allowed and what's been approved in other quarters, and as was mentioned, the 63rd Street facility, which will allow a very limited number of dogs, 5 to 7 at most, outside, and only for the purpose of doing their dog business. And so the other comparable I would draw, and it was mentioned earlier also, was the PetSmart over in Darien on 75th Street. And notably, of course, that facility does not have outdoor facilities for the dogs, and it also backs up to a residential area. So I really question why, in terms of comparability, that the council would support the use as described, because it is such a vast difference of the number of dogs that could be involved in the sound that it's going to generate, that I think it's far in excess of other comparable uses that have been allowed either in our neighbor Darien or even more closely within about a mile, the operation on 63rd Street. I'd like to make one other comment too, and there's a note in the a response in the commission evaluation, and I think it's more in the nature of the business that might be generated for the proposed facility, and that is, it mentions it's at the corner of 75th and Lamont, and there's 27 to 35,000 cars going by there today, a daily basis. And you might draw from that, I don't think it was intended to do that, but someone might infer from that, well, that's the noise level in the area, so maybe that kind of should be a benchmark of what is acceptable. But as was shown in the map, of course, it's nowhere near the corner there. It's probably about 4/10 or half a mile from that point. And the real nearest comparable then of any type of noise, if one was considering streets in the area, is Old Main, which has a substantially lower amount of traffic, probably only a few hundred cars a day, if that, and lower speed limits. And so I think it goes to the whole issue about the importance of the noise again. And I don't want to dwell on that. But the last thing that I'll say is that, well, I will add one other thing, because no one else has mentioned this, and in the interest of covering new territory, I wasn't going to mention it, but since we have talked about sanitation issues, there are a certain number of dog owners who will not clean up after their pets when they're going from point A to point B. And as you've heard already, we have a very elaborate it's a stormwater retention area. When the rains are heavy, the water rolls into our yards and then it rolls back out. And so if there is any dog waste that's on the ground or the parking lot and it's not attended to promptly, or even if, there are just times that it can roll into our stormwater system and then eventually it could roll into our yard. So I think it's a safety and health issue in that regard. The last thing I'll mention is that we don't believe that it's appropriate to have the outdoor facility for the proposed project, and that if it really is necessary for the business, then I think a more appropriate place for this would be west of Lamont Avenue on 75th Street, facing 75th Street, the play area, rather than what's been proposed, because it's just too close to a residential area and will affect our property and neighborhood substantially adversely. Thank you for the opportunity to make my comments.
Thank you very much for being here and for sharing those with us. Yes, sir, please.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners. I bought the land and I built the house right behind that development for 36 years. When I came there, it was all cornfields. I never came here and requested anything about putting all the stores in that corner of 75th and Lamont. I don't know whether you guys remember all these things. But now, it has come to a stage that I have to come here along with all my neighbors because it will affect our property value. I only have one question to every one of you personally. If I sit on the other side and put a facility like this in your backyard, what would you tell me? You don't have to answer me.
No, but you don't want to ask me that question because I live across the street from a fire station and the tornado siren, so I'm a bad example.
But that's all I want to ask you. Second thing, you have to respect the sentiments of the people who live there. Like Jerry said, it's close to the grocery store. My other friend told something about it. I can always not to go there. I got enough and more stores all around there. But that's not the issue. As a village, as the officers of the village, you have a moral responsibility to look at our sentiments and our property value, and one of these days we will all retire and we will have to move away from that. And then we may be going bankrupt basically. And that's what I just want to remind you. I did not prepare anything with all the details. You got enough and more of that, and I have signed it too. So my signature is there. My name is Varghese Said. I live at 7213 Orchard Place. I lived there 36 years and almost like a month. Yeah, exactly 1 month, 36 years and 1 month. I haven't seen any of these stores when I came in, and even that 70th and Lamont Junction was never like this. So I have seen all these things developing. I never bothered to come to a village meeting to object anything. But now, I think it is my responsibility to come and let you people know about what we feel about it. Thank you for your attention.
And we appreciate you being here and sharing that with us. Thank you very much. Good evening, welcome.
Hi. My name is Susan Lesniak, and my address is 912 Applegate Avenue. My husband, Emil, and I have been residents of Downers Grove for 25-plus years. We love Downers Grove. It's a lovely community, and Applegate Avenue, which is where we live in particular, has always been a very quiet street, and I certainly hope it can stay that way. That's why Emil and I both signed the petition. We both agree with it. We have three major concerns: noise, noise, and noise. Dog barking is annoying noise. The outdoor play area for the dogs will absolutely bring noise, noise, noise to our quiet neighborhood. I don't care how you slice it. If this outdoor play area is approved, it will turn our quiet neighborhood into a boarding kennel that we live by. We have huge concerns that this will negatively affect our property values. I can tell you, I would never have purchased a home if it was so close to a boarding kennel, and I would bet you would all feel exactly the same way. I also feel that if this outdoor play area is approved, it will become a huge burden on the neighbors and the Downers Grove Police Department. If the barking is too loud and annoying, trust me, we will call the police. The police will be dispatched, and then letters will be written to Pete and Max Resort Facility. We value our Downers Grove Police Department and do not feel it would be fair to burden them with these types of problems. The truth of the matter is they have enough to do. As homeowners, we should have an outlet to voice our concerns, and I'm hoping you are all listening. I respectfully ask that you all put yourselves in our positions and try to imagine how you would feel if you lived near a facility that allowed 33 or more dogs at one time to be left outside. We all know that barking is inevitable. Should this get passed, the neighbors will be burdened with noise, and the police department will be burdened with all the calls about noise. Pete and Max Resort owners, on the other hand, will not even know about this, as it's my understanding they don't live in the state. This means letters of complaint will be written to the property owners, and well, you probably know how that's going to go. It'll be drawn out, police resources will be used, homeowners will be angry, and more than likely nothing will be resolved. I recall several years ago, someone tossed a large rock through our front window. The Downers Grove Police Department came out. After some investigation, they determined it was likely bored kids causing trouble in the neighborhood. I remember being upset, and the Downers Grove officer looked me straight in the eye and said, "Mrs. Lesniak, you deserve to feel safe and secure in your home. Your home is a place where you should feel safe, comfortable, and relaxed." Those words really resonated with me, and that officer was right. As homeowners, we are all entitled to live in homes that are safe and quiet and stress-free. Wouldn't you agree? Don't we all deserve to live in a nice, quiet, stress-free neighborhood? I don't think that's too much to ask. Although we appreciate the luxury care these dogs will be provided, spas, grooming, massages, etc., we truly believe as homeowners our right to keeping our neighborhood quiet and stress-free should be the #1 priority. On a final note, I am hopeful that these proceedings are being held in good faith. I'm troubled as we have noticed lights on recently at the proposed doggy daycare, and we have noticed that it appears to look as if work has already begun inside this building. I certainly hope this will not just be a rubber stamp. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your comments. Good evening. Welcome.
Hi, I'm Dan Dosen, where my wife Sue and I live at 7217 Orchard Place. We've been there since 2003. Noise, of course, is the reason I'm up here too. I'm not an expert at noise and the noise that a dog can generate, but I went to the expert out there, the internet, maybe fake news, but it's pretty consistently what you'll find is that a single dog can generate by themselves anywhere from 75 to 100 more decibels with their bark, right? 30 dogs can generate over 100 decibels, and so think about that. That's the sound of a siren, right? Mayor, you live by the fire department, and you hear a siren every once in a while. But think about that siren going off every day, including weekends, 6 to 7 hours at a time. What if the mitigation doesn't work, right? What do we have, what recourse do we have? Is 70 decibels enough? Is it 70 decibels most of the time? If it's below 70, it just is I think that, again, everyone is saying you underestimate just how loud a dog can be, and even a single dog, if it was barking all day long, would not, be compliant with the ordinance. And so I think it would really then fall upon us to be complaining. And then, again, how long does this have to go on before it is taken care of, and what recourse do we really have? That's it.
Thank you. Good evening. Welcome.
Good evening. My name is Brian Spain. I'm the chairman and CEO of Pet Resorts, Inc., the company that is requesting the special use permit. I appreciate, Mayor, your time, commissioners, and the ladies and gentlemen that have expressed their concerns. We heard these at the Planning and Zone Commission, and for that reason, I commissioned a study with professional engineers to go out, as Ms. Barwell mentioned to you earlier. And the study clearly states that 8 foot from the extremity of the outdoor play area, the decibel level did not exceed 64 decibels. I went out myself today and measured the distance to the closest front door from our entryway, and that's 255 feet. I measured the closest residence to our our outdoor play area is 390 feet. So in an 8-foot buffer from the exterior of some 30 dogs, as they describe out there, the decibel level with without the baffles, now this was done without the baffles, was 64 decibels. We will take every effort, do everything we can to make certain that we mitigate this noise problem, because we recognize it could be a problem. And I too, in conjunction with yourselves respectfully, I would be upset if somebody brought in noise levels up above that myself. But I know from having built these around the country, been with the company for 10 years, we've experienced one time in the Phoenix store that I built, a neighbor that was 50 feet away from us who had an outdoor garage and came to us and said he heard the dogs barking. We then commissioned sound engineers to come up with an idea to help us solve it. They came up with the ideas of using the interlaced baffles. It solved it completely. Never heard another complaint whatsoever. So we are cognizant of the concerns that you express, and we run a first-class operation. We take our service to the peak. We do glass block walls. We could cut our cost in half by doing wire kennels and this sort of thing, but we don't do that. We treat our guests, as we call them, with care like they're our own dogs. And as such, we train our personnel in how to handle them. We provide a first-class quality operation. We couldn't operate if we had odors emanating through the walls, as has been described to us previously. We couldn't operate if we left feces laying around our facility. We couldn't operate if we were intruding on people. The reason we're successful and we're a growth company is because we operate properly. We go above and beyond to make sure that we do things right. The only other thing I'd like to mention, it's been described, I heard one of the ladies say there's like 6 diesels outside the back of the shopping center. Those diesels are a whole lot louder than what a barking dog is. And they don't turn them off at night when they go load and unload. They leave them idling. And those noises do carry. Further to that, we sat this afternoon and listened to Merlin's and National Tire and Battery using pneumatic power impact wrenches with their doors wide open to the neighborhood, which would be much greater noise than what our empirical data reflected from a current study that we did last week. So with all due respect, we're here to answer any questions and happy to try to answer any concerns, and I do respect their concerns about the noise, but I feel like that we have mitigated that by taking the positive approach to have a study done so that we could prove empirically that it wouldn't happen. Thank you very much.
I have a question.
Excuse me, sir.
I have a question.
Excuse me, sir.
He said it'd take questions.
Sir, excuse me. Please, no talking when other people are speaking. No one was speaking when the folks in the audience were speaking. I heard a lot of talking. Please be respectful of everyone. And there will be an opportunity to ask a question, but this is my meeting, please. I'd ask that you would just be patient with me. Commissioner Jose has a question of this gentleman, and after he sits down, I welcome you to the podium. You can ask a question, and we can put it to the gentleman, but we're not going to have a back and forth in the audience. Okay? Thank you. Commissioner Jose.
Thank you, Mayor. You talked about the acoustic baffles, and there's a bit of information in the packet on it. but I don't see any indication as to what the noise dampening effect is. Could you give us any further information on what the impact of installing the baffles is expected to be?
Well, I can tell you for 9 years, I was Senior Vice President of Dave & Buster's. I don't know whether you're familiar with that concept. There are a couple here. I've built them all around the country. We learned from hanging baffles and curtains within our midway area that sound travels and doesn't, if unobstructed, it'll travel throughout the facility. With the baffles in there, it resonates the sound and contains it as opposed to letting it emanate back out away from the facility. And we were very successful with it at the Happy Valley location in Phoenix.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Commissioner Earl?
Yes, can you tell me when the dogs are outside, whether they will be attended or unattended?
Oh, absolutely, they'll be attended.
And that's one person per all the dogs out there?
It depends upon how many dogs are out there. If there's a full complement of 30 dogs, there'll be at least 2 and possibly 3 attendants out there. And one of the things I did forget to mention, when we were talking about the odor and the potential for feces around the facility, we have our employees on a routine basis go out and canvass the front entryway to our facility and around our parking lot to make certain there is no residue left unattended. We take care of that. We have to run that type of facility.
And can I ask what your minimum staffing level per pet load is? Minimum staffing per pet? Do you have a ratio of staff per pet?
We have, and I'm going to have to defer to the Chief Operating Officer on that. She can answer that better than I, as far as the staffing levels.
Yes, actually, we do. For daycare, as Brian said, we are 1 to about 15. And in our boarding, we're 1 to 30.
So that's in the overnight hours, it would be
Yes.
1 to 30, and that wouldn't be the time when the dogs are outside?
The way that the daycare runs, we don't open daycare and put dogs out there until 8 a.m. Depending on how many we have, we may run straight through to 2 p.m. If we give them an hour break, which means pull them in for an hour, take them back out, then we'll run until 3 p.m. But daycare is over by 3 p.m.
And then all the dogs are back in cage or their own little room?
They're back in their rooms.
Understand.
And just to add to that, Commissioner Earl, this is one of the things that sets us apart from the others. It's more staff, more labor intensive to do this, but our owners of our guests come to us because we do take their animals outside, give them some exercise, give them fresh air, let them play with some of the others, and bring them back in. That is one of the things that sets us apart.
Thank you.
Commissioner Waldeck?
Thank you, Mayor. Quick question. On snow days, extremely rainy days, they're playing inside?
No, because it is covered and we will heat it. We have locations in Missouri and Kansas, so they get snow. And we heat it. Now, we do say if we fall at 30 or below, everybody's inside.
Thank you.
Sir, thank you for your patience. You had a question. If you'd like to ask it, I hate to ask you to come to the podium, but we're televising this, and no one will hear you if you don't mind. And then I'll be happy to direct the question to the petitioner. I appreciate your patience. And if you could please let us know who you are.
My name is George Vogren. I live at 933 73rd Street in Downers Grove. I just have one question for the people wanting to place this facility. Do they have any other facilities around the country adjacent to, contiguous to a restaurant or a grocery store? Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Now the folks at home had the benefit of your question, and I will now ask you to please respond to the gentleman's question.
We are not adjacent connected to a grocery store, but in Avondale, Arizona, we are in the heart of retail.
And pretend I asked you the question.
I'm
please.
sorry.
That's all right. Direct it up here, please.
In the heart of retail, and we also at that facility have apartment homes right across the street, and we have never had a noise complaint. We have another facility that actually abuts to residences. And again, this is, the one I'm talking about right now is not an enclosed daycare, it's wide open. And again, no noise complaints, and that's been open since 2002. So we are located in different areas. We're either by retail or we're by residences.
Thank you. Yes, if you wouldn't mind, again, only because this is being televised and the microphone is very important, otherwise no one will hear you.
Thank you. So I understand that they're trying to sell this and it's a luxury day spa, but two comments that just came out of this gentleman were they heard noise from the NTB, which we live by NTB, so there is noise. And I would think that that's going to cause problems for the dogs. If we're concerned about the dogs, that's a negative. There were also comments about the trucks that come into the grocery store. There's diesel fuel, he mentioned. Diesel fuel smells will not be good for dogs. So if we're trying to sell this as this wonderful luxury spa, which I understand they are, those are two things that seem to be working against them. Thank you.
Thank you. Others in the audience who have not spoken on this topic? Before we have second and third comments, someone who has not spoken, I'd like to give them a chance first, please. Good evening. Welcome, sir.
Good evening. My name is John DeWolf. I'm here from Kimco Realty, the owner of the shopping center, Downers Park Plaza. I'm just here to speak in support of Pete and Max. I've been working with them now for 6 months. They've been educating us on their business and making us feel more comfortable that they are a first-class operation. I have spoke with Shop and Save on several occasions. I am the one that negotiated the lease with Shop and Save, and the owners have assured me that they have no objections and they support the use. I've been with the company 10 years. We've owned the center since 1999. I understand that the center's been there since the late 70s. Again, we support the use. They've been able to satisfy all of our concerns, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that with us. Someone who hasn't spoken yet. We have two people. And again, I apologize, but if you wouldn't mind coming to the podium, because otherwise the folks who are watching at home or who will be listening to this recording later will not hear you. And every question is very important. I want to make sure it gets captured. Yes, welcome back.
Thank you. Hearing about everything, that's why I'm still here, because it is a very, very important issue for all residents of Downers Grove. Have you thought about airborne bacteria? When the wind blows and all of the germs goes to this house or that house, pretty soon you would say, how come I got sick? Their location is wrong. It should not be in a residential area because the airborne bacteria, I don't have to explain. Thank you.
Thank you. Someone else who has not spoken yet to this issue, please. We have a couple of people. Good evening. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. First of all, congratulate all the members giving so much attention to the speakers. My name is Eugene Poulin. My family has had property in Downers Grove for 99 years. I lived my whole life of 86 years in the village. I've never addressed the council before, but I do rise this time to oppose the use request. I have a few brief facts, brief enough to be less than 5 minutes. I hope you'll smile about that. First, the council approval is permanent. All parties are bound. The village, all village residents, the permit grantee, the fire and police departments, and the health department of DuPage. Second, the expression play area is grossly misnamed. Typically, dog owners take their pet outside primarily for bowel relief. Any outdoor play is incidental and dogs quickly learn to expect the same daily routine. Dogs have the natural instinct to obtain their own meals, even when it happens to be another dog. Fierce dog fights, therefore, are not uncommon between dogs meeting outdoors. Thank you.
Thank you. And I just want to point out that in our community, every 20 years of residency entitles you to one vote. So, sir, congratulations, you have 4 votes in the next election. Good evening, welcome.
Thank you. My name is Martin Hernandez, and I live in 7217 Donis Grove, Webster Street. I have a question for this business.
If you could direct it to us, and then we'll ask the question, please.
You said that you follow the, what kind of practices? Did you ask permission to open this business to the USDA Agriculture?
All right, so the question is regulatory approval necessary. Did you have another question or comment?
Well, because in the presentation, they mentioned that the air changes is 6 to 7 per hour, and I work in research, and we had to follow 10 to 12 air changes per hour to maintain the smell and allergies out of the rooms. And also, are they going to use HEPA filters to reduce the contamination of the bacteria and airborne diseases?
Yeah, I think I've got your 2 questions. I'll be happy to ask them unless you had something else you wanted to add.
At this point, I have only those questions.
Okay, thank you. The 2 questions, and I'll leave it to the petitioner, either ask them now or after other folks have spoken, as I understood them, was number 1, what state and federal regulations might you be governed by that you need to comply with for this facility? And number 2, what steps are you taking more specifically in terms of mechanics to ensure air quality? That's how I understood the 2 questions. Is that fair, sir? Yes. Thank you.
We will fall under the Department of Agriculture. We'll have to be licensed and inspected by them as we are in our other facilities. And as far as mitigating disease, airborne, we change our filters monthly on the AC units. Again, we're changing the air. And if I can add too, we have contracted extermination every month. All dogs who enter our facility have to be fully vaccinated by a licensed veterinarian, or they're not allowed in.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And I know there were some other folks who wanted to speak further. Other questions or comments? Yes, please, sir.
Yeah, I just want to respond to the, again, there's been a considerable amount of support for the manner in which the business prospects have diligently gone about satisfying, all the concerns. And I just want to suggest that it's kind of being nuanced, this discussion is being nuanced in the wrong direction. Nobody, I don't think, here is disputing the quality of this operation. And nobody is disputing their efforts to mitigate all of these kinds of concerns, sanitation, noise. But I want to emphasize again that perception is reality. And if I want to list my home, I can't very well have every potential buyer speak with them and allay all their anxieties about what they might be facing. They're going to see Pete and Max. There's an 88-dog boarding facility. The impact on our property value is indisputable. It's a great business plan. I'm merely saying there has to be a more suitable location for this.
Thank you. Before anyone else speaks for a second or third time, please note this is not a courtroom drama. We're not going to have closing arguments. It's not who speaks last or the rebuttals. It's not a response. I know everybody wanted to make a closing argument. Everybody wants to be Al Pacino in the courtroom. I got it. But got to go to law school first. Just so points have been made, please know we have heard them. We do understand them. If we didn't understand them, we'll ask questions, or we still have opportunities to ask questions. But please, it's not who speaks last, or it's not a debate between the 2 sides. We're listening to everything you have to say. So I would encourage, if there's something that hasn't been said, please, we'd love to hear it. Otherwise, you've made your points very well and very persuasively across the board.
I just had one quick question, and that is this. What would the objection of Pete and Max be to using solely an indoor facility rather than the outdoor facility? And I ask it in the context, I know from the discussion at the Plan Commission that they desired to have animals outside, although recognizing, I think, from their plan that only some go outside, but not all of them. But my question is, in the spirit of compromise, in the spirit of being of goodwill and building a bridge to 179 at least potential customers, what would the objection be to using solely an inside facility? Thank you.
Understood, and I won't pretend to answer that question for them, but we're all in the same room and we're all hearing what everyone has to say. I'll leave it at that.
Mr. Shard, I appreciate your question, and, excuse me, that question's coming from the mayor, forgive me.
I'm not even sure I asked it. I think it was more of a question, is why is your business plan your business plan?
And
That's
as
up to
I
you.
stated previously, this is what sets us apart. This is what makes our business plan work. It's the reason that we can put in the amount of investment into this facility to set ourselves above and ahead of our competitors. And that is that we take the dogs out and exercise them. They come back home happy, tired, and that's what the owners love.
Thank you. So I understand his question is that's their preference, but, please.
Quick question for Pete and Max. They said that the outdoor play area closes at 6. I don't own a dog, but do dogs need to eliminate at night? So I wonder how that happens. Like, do they come back out to eliminate? So how does that work out? Like, do they open up the play area for them to go back out and do the business?
Thank you. The thing is, I understood the question, it was with respect to hours of operation, during what hours would guests be outdoors?
They will be outside if they are in daycare from 8 to 3. We will take small groups out after that, or even individual with a pet guardian, just so they can eliminate. But again, the dogs will be in our facility. We close at 7. We reopen at 6:30. Our night staff does go through and clean up any messes, but they will mess inside their room. And that's, again, why we install the trench drain system that we do, because it's reality that they are going to do it inside the building too. So again, it is swept down the trench drain, out of the building, and then we clean with our cleaning products.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And thank you for keeping that as scientific as possible. Yes, sir. Welcome.
Thank you. John Hanson, 833 Old Orchard Avenue. Quite honestly, the majority of the concerns and questions that I had coming in tonight have been answered and stated by either many of the residents in the area, or I also, quite honestly, commend Pete and Max for their due diligence that they did from the Planning Commission meeting to tonight with doing the outside study with the decibel level, et cetera. One question I do have for the council is that you talked about specific decibel levels that are mandatory to stay below for any issue within Downers Grove. Now, and you'd said that that possibly could be something that would be added to the special service request.
It's an option.
An option. My question to that is, that decibel level, is that for any specific length of time? Is it for a short burst of time? And how far away from the creator of that level does it apply?
Sure, all fair questions, and since I threw that out there, I will only try to answer it from my perspective, and all I was discussing was an option that could be crafted. I wasn't suggesting a particular solution. I know how we measure it, but, and that's the answer that Mr. Popovich is going to give in a second, but let me just make sure I clarify something. So you're talking about the duration of the noise itself. The duration of the restriction, if there were a restriction, would be for the entire duration of the special use. In other words,
My question would be...
I think
is
you
that-
were asking, you're talking about the peaks and valleys in sound and then when is it measured and whatnot. And I think we can answer that generally, but the other possibility is we can craft conditions on special uses that aren't necessarily limited. I mean, they're limited by practicality, but they're not necessarily limited to other standards.
Okay.
But if you would like an answer to the question about how and when is the sound measured, Mr. Popovich looks like he's sitting on the edge of his seat ready to answer that question. So, Mr. Popovich, what's the answer to that question?
Thank you, Mayor. Nice to see you again. So the noise is 65 decibels during the daytime, and then it's allowed to exceed 5 decibels over for no more than 15 minutes. So if somebody's, like a car place is maybe pulling off a tire and using that pneumatic drill, they can exceed the noise limits for a specific amount of time. The higher you go up, if it's
Within a buffer.
Excuse me?
I mean, within a certain range.
Within a certain range for a certain amount of time within an hour. So if it exceeds over 15 decibels, it can only go up a matter of 1.5 minutes. So you can't be 15 decibels over that limitation for over about 1.5 minutes, I believe is what it says in the ordinance.
And that's the general noise ordinance.
That's the general noise ordinance and the zoning ordinance, correct?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Does that answer your question, sir?
For that one, yes. If I may, just to the petitioner, again, I think we've heard that as a whole, the majority of the folks here are not certainly against the idea of the daycare itself. It's just the outdoor facility. And my question would be to them, as an additional potential compromise, that instead of having the outdoor use from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. in the afternoon, as most dogs do not need a 7-hour exercise time frame, that if that could be reduced to something that would be negotiable, let's say from a 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. period. Again, just to take and reflect the concerns of the residents themselves, also take into consideration their desire to fulfill their business plan for the potential folks that come and board their dogs, to give them the exercise, et cetera.
Thank you. I will not consider that to be a question, but rather a statement that everyone in the room heard.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Yes, good evening, welcome.
Hi, good evening. My name is Yolanta Schmeinda from 7220 Orchard Place. Just a couple of comments. One of the things they are trying to sell it, I'm bringing 20 jobs, something like that, to our area. Well, I shop and save. There's all the time a sign on the door. We are hiring, we are hiring. So as far as, kind of those 20 jobs, I mean, Shop and Save cannot find the people. So it's not really, shouldn't be as big of a deal. Also, you can Google about what people say about the salary at the place. Not really something they're going to be fighting over to join. But you can, read it, Google it yourself, the comments of the people. And another thing is, I understand that they ordered a study, they paid for the study. How is that objective? Usually, it's very rare they would find that the company that promotes their product does the study on the product and does find something that would be, not in favor of their product. Thank you.
Thank you. Although I know you're not proposing anyone else pay for it. Thank you. Other questions or comments from members of the audience? Welcome back, sir.
Thank you. I have Jerry Holman again, 834 72nd Street. I have two questions. One thing that has never been clear to me and certainly should be considered in this is, and it's a question for the gentleman from the Kimco Realty, and that is the building that houses the proposed development, the old Walgreens and the grocery store. Are those two spaces 100% hermetically air sealed from one another? And do they share any element of the HVAC systems, either the inputs of heating, cooling, or the cold air returns? That has never been clear to me, and it's certainly a factor of consideration of possible spread of airborne things from, quite frankly, from the dogs The other thing related to that to consider, of course, is then, well, and you had spoken about possible considerations of how adaptations to things, but given that these dogs could be outside in the 35-dog play area, I think it could be a serious concern for the back doors of the grocery store to be open to be receiving deliveries. But that's just a general comment about the safety of the whole process. The other question I have is more of a public works question for the Downers Grove people. And that is, we've heard a lot about the trench, I think called the trench drain system that will be installed for the dogs. And I would imagine when this strip mall was built, there was a certain anticipation of the amount of sewage flow that could be handled on a normalized basis. So my question would be, is it going to be able to handle the proposed, basically the flow that will be generated from upwards of 88 dogs? And if it is not, how is that going to be addressed? Will the taxpayers be bearing the burden to expand this in a way that was not anticipated? Or will that be something that the building owners would bear if this project were to be approved? But I think that's something Public Works people ought to examine and build into the overall knowledge base of this project and its proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. With all due respect, I'm going to take the hermetically sealed question as a comment instead of a question.
Not a question for Kimco Realty.
My understanding is Kimco really is not the petitioner. So I would discourage asking, unless they want to ask questions.
But I would contend the Kimco Realty person got up here and spoke in support of it and why.
Sure, sir, I understand that, but no one's cross-examining anyone else in the audience as well. The petitioner is here. I mean, seriously, the petitioner is here. Well, if I could finish, please, what I was going to say is that that's entirely up to the representative from Kimco, but they're not the petitioner here, and they're really not subjecting themselves. Petitioner, a different story. They're asking a request here, and so they obviously are expecting to be asked questions, and they need to provide answers because they're asking for something that doesn't have to be given to them. They don't have a right to it. It's a privilege. But when the gentleman from Kimco went to ask other questions about the building configurations, I leave it entirely up to him. And then the last thing is with respect to the sanitary issue, I believe that would be the Downers Grove Sanitary District, which is not part of the Village of Downers Grove. So the short answer is don't know.
Bill Stasinski, Studio 21 Architects, and we're architects on the project. And just to kind of answer those questions regarding separation between the two buildings. They're two separate spaces. Masonry wall between both spaces, totally separate mechanical systems, rooftop units that are totally separated in each space. And then regarding the sanitary question, we've already early on talked to the sanitary district and have approvals that they don't share a concern. And one of our concerns was how we would deal with the waste from the outside area, and we would be connecting directly to a sewer that's heading out to the sanitary main. So I think some of these things will still get worked out in the design and obviously approvals through the building department and such, but we're not at that point yet. We still have to get approvals to even move forward. So, okay.
Thank you. Other questions or comments from members of the audience? I will thank you for all of you coming down here and for your patience here the long hour, and for very well put together, very thoughtful, very mindful, and in many ways summary representations of what I know are the views of a number of people based on what your representations are, so we appreciate that. Let me go back to my colleagues on the Village Council. Other questions or comments based on what we've heard for the last number of minutes? Commissioner Earl?
I have a question of staff, of Stan specifically.
You sat down too early.
Sorry, Stan. Hi.
Hello.
Immediately to the east of the play area, proposed play area, there's a 214-foot vacant lot. What is the zoning
Zone B2.
B2? And could you, what is the build setbacks that would be on that lot for B2? Is it?
There's
is it
a
lot line to lot line, or is it?
There's a front yard setback. I'm guessing it's going to be probably around 25, 30 feet, and the sides would be to the north and the south. There's going to be generally no setback on those buildings,
That's
but
what I
then
thought, okay.
people, the way development usually is usually a parking lot around the building, so the building would most likely be in the middle of the lot.
Okay. But at the moment, there's nothing proposed to be in for that?
I'm not aware of anything.
Okay.
We don't have any applications in.
Okay, it's B2. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other questions? Commissioner Waldeck?
While Stan is nearby.
My apologies.
No. I usually don't call you back up here, but how are noise complaints usually handled?
So typically what'll happen is someone will, during typical business hours, they call Community Development Department, and we'll send a code enforcement officer out there. If they can hear the noise, they'll go and observe, I don't know if observe is the right word, observe the noise, listen to the noise, and then go talk to the manager or the person in charge of the property, and then work with them to understand what the issue was, if it was a one-time issue or if this is a continuous issue. And then we'll continue to work with the manager of the property or the manager of the business that's in the property.
Okay. Do you show up with equipment?
We will, yes.
With the initial call?
We do, yes.
Okay, and after hours, which are you probably work after 5, well, you definitely.
I'm here tonight, so yes. My code enforcement officers aren't here tonight, though, so that's typically an 8 to 5. If there's a call at 5 o'clock and we're here, we will go out and respond at that time. If we're not here overnight, we ask that people call the non-emergency number for the police department so that they can go out and let us know what they observed. And then we work closely with the police department on these type of calls or any type of code enforcement actions after hours, where they'll provide us a report typically the next morning. Our code enforcement officers will go and follow up with the management of the business or the property the next day to try to ascertain what the issue was and how to correct that issue.
When after hours being approximately 5 o'clock, if it's relayed to the police department, do the police show up with sound detecting equipment?
We could request that they would, yes.
Okay, so.
And you can also, I'm sorry to interrupt, you can also get a decibel reader on your iPhone or your app stores as well.
Okay, well, that's good to know. Thank you.
Commissioner Jose?
Thank you, Mayor. Stan, while you're there, if you don't recall this right off the top of your head, that's fine. An answer later is fine. The 63rd Street approval, I think we had language in there about noise limits and specifically referencing at least the piece of the code that had to do with the 65 decibel limit. Did we not?
Just read that one. I didn't see that in the final approvals, but I know we discussed it during the review process. We'll double check on that.
Well, at this moment, I have the November 10th, 2015 minutes up. And what the minutes indicate, and I don't know if this got into the final approval, according to this, at the discretion of the village manager, it could be required that sound monitoring occur at the property line. And if it exceeds the amounts stated in the ordinance, that would be grounds to come before the council and revoke the special use.
That's what I remember. I just couldn't remember how it was documented.
Yeah, and my understanding, I guess, the sound measuring technology is becoming considerably more inexpensive than it was maybe 10 years ago. So it would be possible to place monitoring devices at the property line. And if it exceeds, because I believe the understanding is if it's not a condition of special use, then it's simply an ordinance violation that gets processed through the normal, whether they end up going to field court. But if it was a condition of the special use, and if sound monitors were placed at the property line, and if there was objective evidence that sound that goes beyond the property line exceeds the requirements of the zoning ordinance, or the noise ordinance, that would potentially result in a revocation of the special use. And that the ability to measure sounds at the property line, I remember, there was an issue with the marching band practicing in Lakeview, and the neighbor, very sophisticated, he brought in all kinds of charts about about the level of noise, so that I know that can be done.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you for that.
Secondly, and like I said, I don't need an answer on this now, be interested to know if we've ever gotten any noise complaints on the NTB folks.
I'll have to
that are
do the
close by.
research on that one. I don't remember anything, but we'll look.
No problem. And then this is more for the petitioner, and just something to think about. I wonder if they might be willing to consider a number limitation smaller than 35 on the number of dogs that would be outside at any one given time. Other than that, I'd just like to thank everybody for coming out tonight and apologize to those who sent me an email or left me a voicemail that I haven't had a chance to return yet. We do appreciate all of the input. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other questions, comments from members of the council? Hey, well, again, thank you, everyone, for sharing all your views and inputs. And as Commissioner Jose mentioned, we have received a number of emails and messages from folks prior to tonight. We obviously have the petition and really appreciate the very mindful, thoughtful presentations that were made here tonight. Appreciate as well the petitioner and their team answering many of the questions that were posed. We don't take any formal action on this tonight. This would be up for a vote the earliest next week, Madam Attorney?
Yes.
It'll be at our next meeting. So in the meantime, obviously, we'll continue to consider any input that we receive from folks. And very much appreciate you coming down and talking with us and sharing your views. Thank you.
Just add one, this promised 10 seconds.
Okay, I'm going to hold you to it.
Strictly a housekeeping point.
Yes, sir.
In the documentation, there is ambiguity as to, A, the number of dogs. They talk about 88 beds, but they don't talk about the number of dogs. And there is also ambiguity in terms of the time frame. I believe the documentation says a drop dead time at 6 p.m., but there isn't as clear a point on a start time.
Okay, thank you. We can certainly clarify that as necessary. Thank you very much. That brings us to the end of our first reading of our workshop agenda. I just took that away from you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And that brings us to item 13, the mayor's report. A few things real quickly, given the lateness of the hour. Number one, I want to remind all residents that the 6th Annual DuPage Human Race is taking place this Saturday, May 6th, beginning at 9 a.m. It's a 5K walk-run that starts over on 1901 Butterfield Road in Chicago. What do I say Chicago for? Obviously, it's late. Take two. 1901 Butterfield Road in good old Downers Grove. Up in the northwest part of our town. That's a nice race. Hopefully the weather will be better than it was last year, or certainly better than it was today. It's a nice flat course, Commissioner Wallace. And second, I don't have to repeat what was said about the Founders Day activities that are taking place in celebration of historic preservation and other points of celebration here in the community. That was capably handled earlier tonight. I do want to point out, actually recognize and thank Commissioner Earl, who I'm sure will add some information as part of her report. Commissioner Earl was part of the DuPage Mayors and Managers contingency down to Springfield to advocate on behalf of Downers Grove and other municipalities. I've gone many times, was not able to go this time, so I wanted to recognize you for that. And thank you for going and representing Downers Grove so capably. I saw you pictured in a number of other mayors' Facebook pages. So I know you were there, and I won't steal your thunder. I just wanted to thank you on behalf of the council and the community. And then
I'd be happy to give you a quick report if that's what you'd like.
Well, it is as quick as you would like. And then the last thing I want to say is that there are only 50 days, 2 hours, 5 minutes, and 17 seconds left until Grove Fest, Rotary Grove Fest, returns to Downers Grove, and we're certainly looking forward to that. And hopefully some warm weather will come with it. That would sure be nice. That ends my report and brings us to our item 14, our village attorney's report. Ms. Petrarca, good evening.
Good evening. We only one item to present this evening, and that is an ordinance authorizing a special use for 7221 Lamont Road to permit a boarding facility. This will appear on next week's active agenda. Thank you, Mayor. That is all.
Thank you. And speaking of council member reports, that brings us to item 15. These are opportunities for the village council members to report out either on an interesting or goings-on in the community or other items of interest, or to report on things such as roles that they have played in other organizations. I'll end with Commissioner Earl and start with Commissioner Jose.
No report, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Waldeck.
Mayor, I do have a couple of items. The 25th Annual Summer Nights Classic Show begins Friday, May 19th, and it'll continue through August 25th. Weekly featured cars are pre-1985 will again be on Curtis Street. All classic cars are welcomed on Main Street from Maple to Franklin. Access to the show, there is a limitation. No cars will be parked prior to 5 o'clock. Reserve parking starts at 5. So check the Downers Grove, Downtown Management Corporation, sorry, it's getting late, downtowndg.org for further information on other exciting events that are taking place. Also, I urge everyone to look at the village home site. You'll notice that there's a tree and shrub sale coming up. Why, it's getting. You'll notice that if you go there, there's a quick video starring our own Doug Kozlowski. Great job by staff and Doug. Doug is trying out for the 3 a.m. Cable TV ads. I don't know if he's going to be doing Sharp Knives next or something, but it's really a joy to watch.
The next Billy Mays.
Could be, but it's really fun to watch, but basically it's the tree and shrub sale. Orders are due June 1st, and pickups will be at the Public Works facility on June 8th. These are native plants. They sell anywhere from $30–35. Well worthwhile and great for not only your backyard, but for stormwater mitigation and, just a lot of the benefits. So check it out. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Wallace.
No report tonight, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Barnett.
No report, Mayor.
Commissioner White.
No report.
And now, Commissioner Earl.
Yes, but I'm going to let you wait a second longer before I get to Springfield, because the library is still in their formal strategic planning mode. And even though all of their regular programming was in February, they're still looking for any input from citizens. So if you have a question, a comment, a suggestion for the library, drop them an email. They're very interested in what you have to say because they really want to tailor their programs to the public, and anything new, and also if you have any ideas on cost effectiveness or cost savings or anything that comes to mind, please drop our new director, Julie, a note. She's been, or anybody over at the library, a note, stop in, talk to somebody, talk to one of the librarians. If you're there, they would be happy to take your question or comment on further and up the ladder. Also, I was in Springfield last Tuesday and Wednesday, lobbying on behalf of the village and DuPage mayors and managers. Unfortunately, very little lobbying actually took place where I was actually lobbying the legislators. Most of it was being lectured by the legislators as to why they don't have a budget or why they thought they didn't have a budget. So mostly what it turned into, unfortunately, was listening to them complain back to us as to how things were going and their frustrations at the stalemate. We did try to get our message across, but by and large, they are solely focused on almost 100% on the lack of a budget and what to do about it. And they are universally frustrated with each other, and would, as best I can see, is that's the message we get back. Anything from a 2-year tax freeze has been proposed, and then a optional 3-year following it, to a permanent and this is all property tax freeze has also been proposed. As there are people who are willing to listen to that, there are people who want no part of it. I can't even express this is the first time I've been down there lobbying, and I couldn't express my dismay any more than I already am. It's very disheartening, it's very sad, and I do hope at some point there's an end in sight and they keep all of their constituents in mind. It does seem that the legislators themselves are very concerned about their constituents and getting a budget passed, but like I said, everyone seems to be frustrated to the effect that anyone higher up is not willing to work together, and it's very sad to see. So I wish I had better news from Springfield, but any way you slice it, it wasn't good.
Well, thank you, Commissioner. Again, thank you for going down there and representing us. Two things real quickly. I found that in my experience, not being down there is very dangerous. So even though you're down there, it doesn't seem like you're accomplishing anything sometimes. It's far worse if you're not there, because those who are present have influence. That's just the way it works. And number two, well, I agree with you that the main focus and the impediment to getting anything else done remains the budget. There have been some proposed pieces of legislation recently that would not have been so good for Downers Grove, that on those more surgical issues, we've been successful in not allowing Springfield to incur more harm. Death by 1,000 cuts.
And that is a very real worry.
I know you were following one of those bills.
Yes. That is a very real worry, and especially because even if they carve out some exemptions in say, a property tax freeze for some of the municipal services, should that bill pass, it will really tie our hands up here as to what can and can't be done, and that would affect things like your snow plowing and your garbage pickup, because we would not be able to even meet any new contract obligations that come up, and that's going to be a real issue. So I don't know. Yeah, I really wish. I mean, our own state representative for the majority of Downers Grove, David Olson, who was here earlier this evening, was actually the one who sat down with us and listened the most, and we were able to leave materials with him, and he was very adamant, and he has made some good contacts down there, so hopefully he will also be lobbying on our behalf. That was a good meeting, but by and large, like I said, the rest of it was just mostly us being lectured to. So although it was an interesting experience to go down and see and participate in, I wish I could bring you back better news. So
Thank you for the report. That brings us to item 16, the manager's report, which, given the lateness of the hour, I'm suggesting, or I'm guessing that the manager Fieldman is going to recommend that we take that up another time?
That's correct. I have no report, even though the agenda shows 2 items. We'll take up those 2 items at a future date. Thank you.
All right, very good. And that brings us to item 17. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Mayor Tully, I move that we adjourn.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner White?
Aye.
Commissioner Walbeck?
Aye.
Commissioner Wallace?
Aye.
Commissioner Earl?
I
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye. Thank you. We are adjourned. Good night, good evening.